Chapter 283, Increase in Strength. While transforming the Saint weapon looked to be a simple task, in actuality this process was one of extreme difficulty. If one's control was insufficient, then the Saint weapon fragments would disappear from one's body and turn them into a cripple. In some serious cases, when the Saint weapon exploded, the amount of energy would be enough for the cultivator to find himself waking up by the Yellow River with no life to return to. This process seemed to be quite easy in terms on paper, but this obstruction had caused many cultivators to be forced to stop before they could make the breakthrough. At the same time, it had also caused many cultivators to lose their lives. As a result, the success rate of a great Saint Master making the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master was 10%. Each and every single one of those who made the breakthrough were cultivation geniuses who were well known to many. Jianshan continued to absorb the energy from within the monster cores at a steady rate. Then at last, the Saint weapon within his dantian had finally reached a point where it was shaking unstably. The energy pulsating out from his Saint weapon was so strong that Jianshan had found it quite hard to control, as if an enormous elephant was trying to pull away from him. A day went by as Jianshan sat in front of the waterfall. 20 Class 4 monster cores had already been absorbed by him before the Saint weapon was at its utmost limit on how much energy it could absorb and was on the verge of exploding. Even Jianshan's body was reaching its limit. Each energy surge within his body moved in such strong amounts that his entire body began to leak blood from his pores. Even the organs within his body were feeling a strong amount of pressure. The monster cores within Jianshan's hand had all of its energy absorbed, so with that, Jianshan took out a Class 5 monster core from his space belt. A Class 5 monster core was even stronger in terms of quality and quantity than a Class 4 monster core. The moment the energy from the Class 5 monster core entered Jianshan's dantian, his Saint weapon couldn't handle it anymore and immediately exploded, causing countless of tiny fragments to appear within his dantian. The very moment the Saint weapon exploded, an extremely strong amount of energy exploded out from his dantian. Firmly, the energy struck against Jianshan's organs and even his meridians as if a bomb had gone off within his body. Jianshan stifled a groan as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Since his Saint weapon had exploded, he felt an extreme amount of damage to his body as the repercussion. The amount of pain was so intense that Jianshan's body felt numb all over. Even his head began to feel dizzy as he teetered on the verge of consciousness. It was this step that caused many men to die on their path to become an Earth Saint Master. Biting his lip, Jianshan resisted the pain to remain awake. He could feel that the energy from when his Saint weapon had fragmented entered his main bloodstream. Jianshan's heart clenched as he threw away his hesitation. The thousands of pieces were all closely linked to his spirit, so he could feel each and every single one of them. Immediately absorbing the energy from the Class 5 monster core, Jianshan tried to replenish the energy he had lost. Jianshan had already made it past the threshold between life and death. What was next was the most crucial step. The Saint weapon fragments would only stay within the dantian temporarily, they would not be permanent. The amount of energy that moved around the dantian would disappear at an alarming rate, and if all of the energy were to leave, then the cultivator would become a cripple. The pure energy from the Class 5 monster core flowed into his dantian. Once immediately inside, the energy would fill up every single fragment of his Saint weapon. Thanks to that energy, not only would the energy within each fragment be replenished, but there was even a surplus of energy that would begin to try and refine the fragments once more. Consequently, the fragments would grow stronger as the quality of the fragment increased. This step of the process required a monumental amount of energy, and so the extremely strong amount of energy from the Class 5 monster core entered Jianshan's body via his pores and began to gather within his dantian. In half a day, the Class 5 monster core had all of its energy completely absorbed. Quickly, Jianshan grabbed another 2 Class 5 monster cores from his space belt. Inside his dantian, the Saint weapon fragments continued to twinkle with a faint light, almost as if they were each a tiny star. The amount of energy they absorbed made them resemble more of a black hole instead, as they showed no signs of stopping. However, the light grew stronger with each passing second. The hardships and troubles of making the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master were in a far different realm of difficulty than his previous breakthroughs. He had to meticulously control every single step of the way without mistake, or all of his efforts would be for nothing. Another 3 days went by. resulting in Jian Chen fully consuming the energy within a dozen Class 5 monster cores. Right now each one of the fragments accumulated an enormous sum of energy so that each fragment was absolutely saturated. By now, they had the ability to transform to become like shining gems, making Jian Chen's Dantian seem as if it was an ocean of shining stars. With a single thought, Jian Chen's spirit transformed into thousands of pieces as he began to reforge the fragments of his saint weapon. At the same time, the two Class 5 monster cores within his hands continued to supply his Dantian with a stream of energy. His Dantian was like the cauldron and the energy was the fire that allowed for the fragments to be refined and smelted. Gotcha! On Jian Chen's face, a crack could be seen forming before his entire body suddenly gained several cracks. The spread was accelerating extremely quick so that his entire body had cracks all over. In the end, his skin was almost like that of an elderly person before finally dropping away from him. On the verge of becoming an Earth Saint Master, his own body would also undergo a transformation. An Earth Saint Master was a huge qualitative leap from a great Saint Master. It would not only make the body stronger, but it would cause the body's skin to be cast away and form anew. The old skin fell away to reveal Jian Chen's new skin. The new skin was unblemished like an infant's, and there was a strange glow of light flowing around it. 6 hours later, Jian Chen's bodily transformation was complete. His saint force had been completely reforged so that the light wind sword once more floated within Jian Chen's Dantian as if it had never been broken in the first place. However, the amount of energy it contained was several times stronger than before, a dozen times at the very least. This wasn't a small increase in strength, but rather a huge jump in quality. If the amount of energy within the light wind sword before was like a vat of water, then the amount of energy now was like an endless ocean. If the energy before was like a small fire that could burn only paper, then the energy now was a raging inferno that could melt even steel. The two could simply not be compared to each other in a relatable degree. Jian Chen didn't stop there. The energy continued to splash into his body and enter his bloodstream, organs, meridians, tissue, and even into his Dantian once more. The previous step where the body transformation was for the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master. Right now this system of refining his entire body was in according to the Azulite Sword Laws, record of bodily refinement, method to increase his strength. By now Jian Chen's saint force was several times stronger than before. It could be said for certain that the moment his body finished being tempered, then he would go through another leap in strength. Chapter 284, The Return. Now at least a dozen times stronger than before, Jian Chen's saint force continued to wash over his skin before assimilating into each part of his body. Jian Chen had completely finished refining his body, but not a single spot of his body had changed physically. If he were to exercise to strengthen his body, then his body would be deformed into a shape he did not want. He would become sturdier and that would completely squash Jian Chen's preferred build. This type of development was not suitable for what Jian Chen needed. Not a single swordsman should have a stocky build. A sword user must remain thin and slender. This way, it would be more beneficial for the swordsman to be able to swing in any position with the least amount of power or movement. The way the Azulite Sword Laws had recorded the record of bodily refinement would best suit a sword user that fights in the same manner as a fencer. This method not only strengthened the body without changing the shape of it, but it would continue to strengthen the body. As long as the energy is supplied to the inner body, then the entire body would be strengthened as a whole. A layer of energy continued to flow over Jian Chen's body with a sparkling light. After that transformation, the pure energy harmonized with Jian Chen's body, improving his flesh and blood immensely. The energy from the Class 5 monster core would be used in place of his own energy. Strengthening his body required a tremendous amount of energy. Since Jian Chen had the monster cores, he didn't need to worry at all about using too much energy. The awkward event that had occurred back in the Changyang mansion would not happen again. The process of tempering and refining his body required a longer amount of time. After 7 days, Jian Chen had absorbed another 24 Class 5 monster cores before finally finishing. By now, he was at the utmost limit. If he wanted to increase his body any more, then he would have to use his saint force to transform it. On top of the giant stone, Jianchen slowly opened his eyes from his meditative state as he finally returned to the land of reality. His ears trembled as the sounds of the roar of a wild beast could be heard from some distance away. Feeling the extreme change in quality in his Saint Force, Jianchen couldn't help but have an extremely happy smile on his face. As of today, he had finally made the breakthrough to become an Earth Saint Master, earning his spot as one of the strongest experts on the continent. Right now my body is far stronger than before. At this point, I wager that it is at least a dozen times stronger. At this rate, even a saint couldn't hope to damage me with his saint weapon. Jianchen muttered as he poked at his own body. A look of joy covered his face as he figured out the results. Extending his hand, a large concentration of saint force began to flow toward Jianchen's arm before quickly forming the light wind sword. When the light wind sword appeared in Jianchen's hands, it released an intense light that seemed even sharper than before. The light wind sword of now did not differ in shape or size. The sword had undergone no physical change other than the increased glow to it. It was almost as if it reflected light as clearly as a mirror could illuminate the area around it. Suddenly, with a single shake of Jianchen's hand, the light wind sword began to shake intensely. With a large sound of a sword moving through the air, a bright silver light came out from the light wind sword and instantly cut all of the surrounding pieces of grass that made contact with it into powder. An intense glare appeared in Jianchen's eye at that moment as his figure suddenly disappeared into thin air. His body became hard to detect as an ear-piercing shriek could be heard. The light wind sword multiplied into a series of mirror images as it filled the air before stabbing outward in every single direction. His unbelievably fast speed was enough for a large gust of wind to blow into the field. Gradually, the wind picked up in speed before causing some of the loose grass and leaves to fly into the air and swirl around Jianchen. The light wind sword continued to ring with a screeching sound as the various mirror images of the blade continued to stab at the countless floating leaves. This fast movement continued on for some time before Jianchen came to a screeching halt. Instantly, the wind that had been created due to his speed began to die down. Because of that, the leaves all lost their upward momentum and began to descend back down to the ground slowly. If one were to look closely, each and every single one of the leaves would have the character, sword, etched into it. Each character was of varying sizes, but each one of them had been etched with an exquisite handwriting. Not a single one was sloppily done and each leaf did not have any extraneous damage. After making the breakthrough to becoming an Earth Saint Master, Jianchen's sword speed had increased once more. When he was still a Great Saint Master, his sword was fast enough to pressure both Great Saint Masters and even Earth Saint Masters without much trouble. With the Azure and Violet Sword Chi, he was able to defend himself against Earth Saint Masters. Following his rise to become an Earth Saint Master, not a single Earth Saint Master would be able to hold themselves against him if Jianchen were to use his Azure and Violet Sword Chi now. Looking at the fluttering tree leaves around him, Jianchen had a look of pure joy on his face. After reabsorbing the light wind sword, he took off his clothes and leaped into the comfortable pool of water right next to him. After bathing himself, he took out a new pair of clothes and dressed up before immediately leaving the place. Half a day later, Jianchen returned to Walrant City to where the Tianqin clan was. Walking through the clan compound gates, he saw Qin Shao and Ming Dong rush toward him. Both of them had already received prior notice of his return. "Brother Jianchen, you've finally returned. After leaving for a dozen days or so, I was starting to worry. I was even beginning to fear that you wouldn't return in time to go to the gathering of the mercenaries." Qin Shao laughed as he approached Jianchen. "Jianchen, how come you didn't tell me before you left? You just left me here all alone." Ming Dong glared at Jianchen with a grumble as he complained to him. Jianchen looked at Ming Dong for a moment before giving a small smile. "Ming Dong, you are quite talented. In such a short amount of time, you've already reached the Great Saint Master realm. I had anticipated that you would take a longer amount of time, but you've managed to beat my expectations. With the support of your monster cores combined with my free time, I was able to spend the entire time cultivating. Of course my cultivation would progress faster than normal." Ming Dong spoke with a proud look on his face. Chapter 285, The Departure Suddenly. Qin Shao let out a surprised whistle as he began to look at Jian Chen with a strange look. Walking around him, Qin Shao inspected Jian Chen for a moment before saying, "Brother Jian Chen, you left the compound for only a dozen days or so. So why is it I feel that you are completely different than before?" At this, Ming Dong nodded his head in agreement, and here I thought I was the only one, so even Brother Qin Shao could feel that Jian Chen is quite different. Hearing the two men talk, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. If it were just Qin Shao who said this, then Jian Chen could have played it off as some sort of joke, but even Ming Dong unexpectedly detected a change. The situation was now a bit more serious. Could it be that after making a breakthrough to becoming an Earth Saint Master, even these two are able to sense it? Jian Chen thought to himself. Just then, Qin Shao gave a knowing smile as if he realized something. "Brother Jian Chen," he whispered. "In this short amount of time, could you have gone off somewhere to spend the time with some young girl? I've heard that a few men have undergone a great noticeable change after experiencing this." Qin Shao laughed as he smiled coyly. With a dumbfounded look, Jian Chen glared at Qin Shao with a dirty look. "Qin Shao, don't say such nonsense." Continuing to laugh, Qin Shao had a crooked smile on his face. "Brother Jian Chen, you seem quite uncomfortable. Could I have struck the truth head-on?" Jian Chen was left speechless. While Qin Shao was quite honest and tall, Jian Chen didn't think that he would be such a master with women. Ming Dong looked at Jian Chen with a serious look. "Jian Chen, I really do sense that something is quite different with you." Laughing, Jian Chen said, "Then say it, just where am I different?" Looking closely at Jian Chen, Ming Dong began to circle around him like Qin Shao had done before, at last shaking his head. "I don't know." With a smile, Jian Chen said, "That's settled then." On an unrelated note, Brother Qin Shao, has the date for when we set off for Mercenary City been decided? With this change in topic, Qin Shao straightened himself up. "The date has been decided. After 3 days, our Tianqin clan and several other strong sects within the Jia Kingdom will travel to the other kingdom Jia Kingdom is allied with to use their space gate." "Oh. The amount of people participating in the gathering of the mercenaries is quite a lot," Jian Chen muttered. "Although there is going to be 100 people at the least going, only a few dozen of them are actually going to be participating. The rest of them are just bodyguards just in case something goes wrong during the gathering of the mercenaries," Qin Shao said. After the date had been discussed, Jian Chen and Qin Shao separated from each other. Leading Ming Dong back, Jian Chen returned to his own room. Closing the door, Ming Dong grabbed a chair to sit in before looking at Jian Chen with concern. "Jian Chen, it won't be long until the gathering of the mercenaries starts. It will be extremely dangerous there, and even Earth Saint Masters don't have a good chance to survive there. Do you realize this?" With a faint smile, Jian Chen replied, "Ming Dong, don't worry. If I plan on going, then I naturally understand the risks. Even if I don't make it within the top ranks, protecting my own life won't be much of a problem." Jian Chen was filled with confidence in himself. In the past, his strength as a great Saint Master was enough to be a threat against Earth Saint Masters. Now that he had passed the bottleneck, combined with the assistance of the Azure and Violet Sword spirits that could destroy Saint weapons, Earth Saint Masters were no longer a concern for him. "Very well then, I wish you all the best. The gathering of the mercenaries isn't a place I should participate in. Although my strength has reached the Great Saint Master realm, it will be a long time until I am able to qualify for such an event. At the very least, I'll accompany you to Mercenary City." Ming Dong knew that as a great Saint Master, he was not strong enough to participate. If he did, then he would only be sending himself to his death. After that, Ming Dong left Jian Chen's room, leaving him all alone to sit on his bed and focus on strengthening himself once more. Suddenly, a knock on the door could be heard as a white-robed middle-aged man slowly walked into Jian Chen's room. It was the patriarch of the Tianqin clan. The moment Jian Chen saw the patriarch, he immediately stood up from his bed and cupped his hands in salute. "I greet the patriarch." The patriarch had a small smile on his face as he walked in before his eyes looked at Jian Chen for a moment with a sudden stiffness. His eyes held a hint of shock as he couldn't help but speak out with a startled voice. "It is no wonder Shao Er admires you so much. Not only is brother Jian Chen quite strong, but but a genius at cultivation as well. Brother Jianchen can't be any older than 25, yet you've already made the breakthrough in such a short amount of time to become an Earth Saint Master. How terrifying. Jianchen's face didn't have any shock on it. This discovery of the patriarch was to be expected. After making the breakthrough, his entire body had underwent a transformation that allowed Ming Dong and Qin Shao, who were both familiar with him, to be able to detect a change. The extremely experienced patriarch would be able to spot it right away. Patriarch Qin is too kind. This one came across some luck, and thus was able to succeed. Jianchen bowed. Brother Jianchen, since you've only just made the breakthrough, there is a unique presence surrounding your body after the transformation. As long as one is quite sharp-sighted, they will be able to see it. This is not a good benefit for you during the gathering of the mercenaries. Producing a small book in one of his hands, the patriarch said, "This is a method of hiding your presence. After you learn this method, then you will be able to hide your presence so that you will not seem like an Earth Saint Master. In fact, it will hide your entire strength. This will undoubtedly be a great help to you in Mercenary City. After all, every portion of strength hidden is another hidden trump card to be held." Upon seeing this book of a method on how to hide one's presence, Jianchen's eyes gained a joyful light to them. With a word of thanks, he immediately took the book from the patriarch's hands. "Brother Jianchen, we will be leaving in 3 days, so I'll allow you to borrow it for 3 days. After that, please return it to me." The patriarch smiled kindly without the arrogance of an honored elder. Jianchen nodded. "In 3 days, I will definitely return the book." The patriarch walked to a nearby chair to sit in with a look of hesitation. Then, he looked at Jianchen. "Jianchen, I originally came here with a request, might you listen to it?" Hearing the hesitation in the patriarch's voice, Jianchen looked at him. What matter might the patriarch have for me? As long as I have the ability to do it, then I will do my best to not shirk my duties. The patriarch became extremely serious as his eyebrows knit together in concern. "This task shouldn't be of any difficulty to you, but if by chance Xiao'er comes across some trouble in the competition, I implore Brother Jianchen to do his best to rescue my son if need be." Hearing that, Jianchen laughed. "Patriarch Qin doesn't have to worry. Qin Shao and I are like old friends. Even if the patriarch did not request this of me, I would still do it." "Is that right? Then I am relieved. Brother Jianchen, please try to comprehend the hidden presence method quickly then. I will not disturb you any longer." With a sigh of relief, the patriarch quickly departed from his room. 3 days quickly went by as Jianchen was quickly woken up by Qin Shao early in the morning. Then with Ming Dong, the three walked to the main courtyard. By the time Jianchen and the other two arrived, there was already plenty of people congregated together. Around half of the group were 70-year-old elders that Jianchen had never seen before. Right in front of them were 4 large flying-type magical beasts perched nearby. From the look of things, these magical beasts were at the Class 3 magical beast level. Flying-type magical beasts were extremely rare treasures within the Tianyuan continent. Not only were flying magical beasts hard to capture, but not many people would dare try to tame them. Once the rider was in the air, their lives would be entrusted to the flying magical beast. If they were to go crazy thousands of kilometers in the air, then even an Earth Saint Master might not be able to survive. Could it be we are to sit on top of a flying magical beast? I've never rode on one before. Upon seeing the 4 magical beasts, Ming Dong cried out with some excitement. Chapter 286, Grand Elder, could it be we are going to ride a flying magical beast? I've never ridden one before. Seeing the flying-type magical beasts, Ming Dong had a look of excitement. Then a look of worry flashed across his face. I've heard that flying magical beasts oftentimes go out of control since their wild nature is stronger than any other magical beast. If by chance the magical beast throws us down from Midair, then we would all be resigned to death. A blue-robed youth from not too far away looked down on Ming Dong with a look of despite before sneering at him. "Humph, how cowardly. If you do not wish to ride the flying magical beast, then don't, no one is forcing you." Hearing this, Ming Dong stared at the youth with an angry stare, but before he could say anything, the youth opened his mouth once more. "What? Did you wish to fight? Come then, try and hit me. The youth was overly haughty and didn't even see Ming Dong as his opponent at all. Furthermore, he completely ignored Jian Chen, who was right by Ming Dong's side. The surrounding people looked at the commotion with a cold stare, but not a single person wished to get involved. Jian Chen's face narrowed at the youth's words, however. The arrogant nature of this youth was something that Jian Chen disliked, but before he could raise his hand to teach him a minor lesson, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. It was the sturdy-looking Qin Shao who suddenly appeared right next to the youth before slapping him firmly in the face. Tianling, you brat. He spat. To dare curse at my good friend, you're asking for a spanking. Qin Zhao's palm had not been gentle. When the youth had been slapped, he immediately fell to the ground with the part of his face hit already starting to swell. Qin Shao didn't plan on letting Tianling off that easily and immediately kicked him in the stomach, causing the youth to curl up in pain. Opening his mouth, Qin Shao said, Tianling, you are too arrogant. To dare even curse at the brothers of mine, let's see if you dare repeat it again. Tianling looked at Qin Shao in silent fear. Within the Tianqin clan, Qin Shao had a high position of power and was beloved by many. He was even the son of the patriarch, making him a person very few would dare to provoke. Enough, Qin Shao, no matter what you say, you and Tianling grew up with each other. Just why should he be friendly to outsiders? Could it be that these outsiders are even more important than your sisters and brothers? A middle-aged man walked forward before staring icily at Qin Shao. Then, his eyes wandered over to where Jian Chen and Ming Dong was before his expression grew dark. Uncle. The moment the youth saw the middle-aged man, he began to crawl toward him as if he was his savior. Both eyes then swung toward Jian Chen and Ming Dong with a hate-filled glare. Qin Shao himself restrained himself when he saw this man, but his attitude itself did not. Feeling justified in his actions, he spoke, Uncle Tianzhou, just what are you saying? Jian Chen and Ming Dong are my sworn brothers, how could they be considered outsiders? Besides, I heard how this matter was started. Tianling was trying to start trouble for no reason and offended my brothers first. This is entirely his fault, just what right does he have to blame someone else? With a snort, the man ignored Qin Zhao's words before looking coldly at Jian Chen and Ming Dong straight into their eyes. You too, right now we are about to depart from the Zhuya kingdom, please go back to wherever you came from. The man was not at all gentle with his words as he commanded them to leave the area. Hearing this, Jian Chen and Ming Dong both narrowed their eyes. This man was speaking as if he was the patriarch himself giving the orders. Both Jian Chen and Ming Dong had already been guests at the Tianqin clan for 2 months. By now, there was only half a month until the gathering of the Mercenary started. If they were not able to use the space gate, then there would be no possible way for them to reach Mercenary City in such a short amount of time. The man's words had caused Qin Shao to explode with fury as he stomped forward with a furious glare. Uncle Tianzhou, what is the meaning of this? Brothers Jian Chen and Ming Dong have received the Tianqin clan's invitation to join us on our travels to Mercenary City. They are both the noble guests of our clan, just how could you treat them in such a poor manner? Noble guests. The man laughed in disdain, just how could these two be noble guests of the Tianqin clan? Nephew Qin Shao, you should do well to not bring as many dubious people back to our clan. The Tianqin clan is the #1 clan in Valorant City, not just any random small clan. This is not a place where you can bring back any dregs of the city to. Looking back to Jian Chen and Ming Dong, the man said, be tactful and leave this place at once. This is not a place where you should loiter about. Uncle Tianzhou, you dare to call my friends some random dregs of the city? Then could those 3 men behind you be nobles then? According to your own words, we should not be bringing in the dregs of the city into our Tianqin clan. Qin Shao spoke rudely. If it were any other person that was talking to Qin Shao like the middle-aged man, then they would have been waking up with a headache. This middle-aged man was not someone Qin Shao could defy too much, so he could only hold back his anger. The middle-aged man's face grew dark. The 3 brothers behind me are the pillars of my mercenary group and have traveled extensively with me for over 20 years. We've went through multiple life or death situations and even crawled up from the very depths of hell together to become friends until death. Just how could that be compared to the people you've randomly found outside the clan? With that, the man turned to look at Jianghu once more. So you haven't left yet still? Did you wish for me to remove you from this area personally then? The surrounding people were all looking closely at them now. Not a single one of them had said a thing. Although Jianghu had been a guest, it was a relatively unknown matter. Aside from Qin Shao and a few others, not many people knew Jianghu. Jianghu's face began to darken as he spoke. If it is the Patriarch's will, then this one will immediately leave. But whoever you are, how could you represent the will of the Patriarch? Just what qualifications do you have to tell me to leave? To dare refuse to hear me, you are courting death. The man bellowed before a ripple of Saint force formed in his hand. A bright red-colored blade appeared in the man's hands, causing the temperature to skyrocket whenever it was swung. Stay your hand. Just as the man was about to slash into Jianghu, a dignified-sounding voice suddenly called out, causing everyone to turn to look at the purple-robed patriarch of the Tianqin clan walking toward them. Seeing the patriarch walk by, the man slowly reabsorbed his saint weapon. With a venomous glare, the man looked at Jianghu. I'll let you off today, leave the Tianqin clan now. Jianghu's own eyes had a cold tint to them as a small amount of killing intent slowly leaked out from him. There was even a sneer of disdain on Jianghu's face as well. He knew all too clearly that the man was an Earth Saint Master, and a Fire Saint Master at that. A single strike of his would be extremely overwhelming, but even then, Jianghu did not see it as a threat to him. Ming still had an angry look on face. The words of the middle-aged man did not leave him with a happy sensation. Even Qin Shao looked quite troubled. The Patriarch only needed to take a single look at Qin Shao to know what event had just transpired. With a dark look, he turned to look at the middle-aged man. Tianzhou, brother Jianghu is an honored guest of our Tianqin clan. Just how could you be so rude to him? The one called Tianzhou snorted before giving an askew glance at Jianghu and Ming Dong. Elder brother Qin, just when will you learn of nephew Qin Zhao's attitude? Going around randomly and pretending that two younger generation men are our honored guests? If the Tianqin clan were to be different than what it is now with big brother Tian Ming as the patriarch, then we wouldn't have any random person enter our clan. What's even more ridiculous is that our Tianqin clan is for some reason bringing two outsiders through the space gate to enter Mercenary City. Big brother Qin, do you not realize just how costly the price of using the space gate is? Shut your mouth. The patriarch's face became gravely serious. Tianzhou, how can you speak to me in such a manner? Tianzhou, it seems your time in the outside world has made you even more narrow-minded than before. Brother Jianghu is an honored guest within our Tianqin clan. With this type of treatment toward our guest, just how could our reputation not be tarnished by this? Hurry up and apologize to brother Jianghu immediately. The patriarch bellowed angrily. Like father like son. Wanting me to apologize to the younger generation? That is just wishful thinking. Tianzhou spoke haughtily. As if he was a high and mighty clan leader, he simply gave no face at all to the patriarch. With that, he leaped into the air and landed on the back of one of the flying magical beasts. Then, the three men behind him followed suit and landed on top of the flying magical beast as well. Seeing how Tianzhou was so condescending to the others, the patriarch of the Tianqin clan narrowed his eyes. His chest began to heave heavily in anger, showing that he was not pleased at all. Qin Shao walked up to Jianghu and whispered to him, that man is Uncle Tianzhou. He's a part of the Tian family and holds a high position within the Tianqin clan that is almost as powerful as my father. He has been traveling in the outside world for many a years and only returned to the clan 2 days ago. It seems that he has a major complaint with you here. In the future, you must take care, since he is an Earth Saint Master. Jianghu nodded his head and said, I will be careful. Just at that moment, a black-robed elder dropped down from the skies before somehow floating 10 meters above the ground before looking at everyone there. We see the Grand Elder. As soon as everyone saw this elder, everyone within the clan compound bowed deeply. Even the Tianzhou who was sitting on the flying magical beast immediately got up to bow down respectfully. A heaven saint master. Seeing the floating elder, Jian Chen's pupils dilated in shock. This Tianqin clan had unexpectedly had a heaven saint master expert. The elder looked at both the patriarch of the Tianqin clan and Tianzhou before looking at the nearby Qin Shao with a kind smile on his face. The moment his eyes landed upon Jian Chen, there was a look of extreme disbelief, but that was quickly hidden away from his eyes. Exhaling, the elder's gaze grew complicated once more. Regret could be seen along with rejoicement, but then even an eager expectation could be seen, causing people to be confused. Tianzhou, Qin Yisheng. The elder spoke. I am at the Grand Elder's command. The patriarch and Tianzhou both spoke out. The very first teachings of the Tianqin clan passed down from our ancestors are something you too should understand. In the case that the two of you are trying to split the Tianqin clan, then a serious punishment awaits the both of you. The elder spoke calmly, but when the two men heard those words, their hearts shook with fear. The Grand Elder needn't worry, we adhere to the ancestors' teachings and will defend the feelings of the Tianqin clan. The patriarch said. Tianzhou bowed his head. I, Tianzhou, respect the ancestors' teachings and will strive to protect the clan's feelings. Good. The elder nodded his head. Is everyone here? Everyone is here, Grand Elder. The patriarch spoke straight away. Then let us be off now. After that, everyone climbed onto the back of the flying magical beast. Each one of them had dozens of people, totaling to 40 people per beast. Ming Dong and Jian Chen both sat on the same magical beast along with another 7 people sitting right next to them on its back. With a fierce flap of its wings, the flying magical beast immediately took off into the air and began to accelerate. The Grand Elder of the Tianqin clan began to follow close behind, flying on his own as if to personally oversee their trip. Chapter 287. Space Gate. The flying magical beast rose several kilometers into the air at a rapid speed while the Grand Elder followed close behind on his own. He was there to protect them all in the case that a flying magical beasts went out of control. Although this was not a common occurrence, the majority of these riders were members of the Tianqin clan and were the future of the clan. There was no way the Grand Elder would want them to come across an accident. Sitting on top of a flying magical beast, Jian Chen's expression was quite complicated. His mind couldn't help but think of the Huayun sect who had forced him to run away from his home. At that time, it was Chang Bai who was the one who drove the flying magical beast from Lore City. Then, he thought of his extremely lovable mother Bai Yuntian and his elegant flower-like second sister Changyang Mingyue. Then there was also his sturdy eldest brother Changyang Hu and the ever-so dignified father and leader of the clan, Changyang Ba. Each one of their images suddenly burned brightly within Jian Chen's mind, as well as a few other fragments of memories from his time in the Changyang mansion. Huayun sect. Jian Chen clenched both of his fists tightly in anger. He had been forced to escape from the Jessen kingdom because of them. It was unfortunate that the Huayun sect had so much power within the kingdom and had at least 2 heaven saint masters enlisted within their ranks. This had made even the royal family of the Jessen kingdom unable to help him and the Changyang clan unable to do anything. Huayun sect, just wait for me to return. Jian Chen will return to right this. These years have made me into a wanderer with no home. This debt I will return unto you. Jian Chen's eyes flashed with a terrifying amount of power. He knew that while he was an Earth Saint Master and had the sword spirits with him, no Earth Saint Master could threaten him, but Heaven Saint Masters were something Jian Chen would have trouble against. Each realm after the Earth Saint Master realm was like crossing the endless ocean to attain a new height. The difference was like the heavens and the earth themselves and could not be easily described. The amount of saint force within a Heaven Saint Master was a terrifying amount. They could use it to support themselves as they flew several kilometers into the air to travel and never ran out. It was only if they had gone through a long and intense battle that their saint force would start to feel the effects. Jian Chen continued to sit on top of the flying magical beast as the wind flew past his ears, sounding like a clap of thunder that affected everyone's ears. On the way, several groups of men flying on their own flying-type magical beasts could be seen not too far away. Each one of these men were strong powers within the Wuxia kingdom, and each major group had a single Heaven Saint Master following behind to offer protection. These Heaven Saint Masters and the Tianqin clan's Grand Elder bade a polite greeting as if they were good friends with each other before continuing on with their journey together. Not everyone who wanted to go to Mercenary City had access to a flying magical beast. On the ground far below, countless groups traveled on magical beasts or on foot in great numbers. Each group numbered over 100 while the dust behind them was kicked up, causing the scene to look as if there was a large dirt-colored dragon below. Half a day later, everyone had finally left the borders of the Wuxia kingdom. With another day's time, they finally arrived at the kingdom that had the space gate called the Dazhou Kingdom. I've heard my father once say that there was a time the Dazhou Kingdom was in a golden age where its strength was strong enough to be great friends with the three great empires. The space gate was then left behind by the unbelievably strong protector of the realm. However, when the protector of the realm left, the Dazhou Kingdom began to slowly decline before becoming an obscure and small kingdom like it is today. Qin Shao explained to Jian Chen. Jian Chen could only sigh at the absolute power a strong cultivator could have. He had no idea that even an extremely strong kingdom would slowly decline after the loss of a strong cultivator. While the Dazhou Kingdom had declined, the amount of territory it had remained the same. It took a good part of the day for the flying magical beasts to finally approach the imperial city of the Dazhou Kingdom. The murmur from the people riding on the magical beasts began to grow louder as they approached the city. Jian Chen could see that there were at least 10 Heaven Saint Masters flying together behind them. Aside from that, there was still another Heaven Saint Master riding on a flying magical beast, but he had been harder to discover. These men were from different kingdoms and regions where they represented different factions of power, but each one of them was planning to head to Mercenary City. The Tianqin clan's group was led down to the outside of the Imperial Palace by the Grand Elder. Then, a single armored person came out to greet the Grand Elder with a cordial greeting before ushering everyone inside a courtyard to rest. The space gate will open in 2 days. These next 2 days you can rest easily, but don't wander off. This is still the Imperial Palace of the Dazhou Kingdom. If you cause a disturbance, the clan will not be able to protect you. The Grand Elder warned everyone before leaving. Tianzhou glared icily at Jian Chen before snorting and turning to walk out of the room. Although he had desperately wanted to teach Jian Chen a lesson, he was in the Imperial Palace just like Jian Chen, so he didn't dare cause trouble now. Qin Shao walked up to Jian Chen's side and spoke with some concern. Jian Chen, Tianzhou will be participating in the gathering of the mercenaries. In the case that you come across him, please be careful. Jian Chen nodded without saying a word. These next 2 days were relatively peaceful as the entire Tianqin clan all behaved themselves while resting within the courtyard provided to them by the Imperial Palace. Not a single one of them left the courtyard in fear of causing unneeded trouble. Although the Dazhou Kingdom was stagnating, the kingdom was still capable of making the other kingdoms feel fear. 2 days later, the Tianqin clan followed the Grand Elder out of the courtyard and between the giant pavilions of the palace before finally stopping in front of a large piece of ground. There was already a large amount of people gathered here. At the very least, there were upward of 1,000 men all densely gathered within this piece of ground. Jian Chen tilted his head. He could faintly see a heavily encased area that spanned around 100 meters in circumference and had plenty of people stopping right in front of it. I've heard that the protector of the realm left this barrier many years ago. It's so extremely big and even after so many years, no one has been able to break it. Rumors say that when the Dazhou Kingdom was in a war, a saint ruler stealthily snuck into the Dazhou Kingdom in order to strike at this barrier and take away the space gate. Unfortunately, even with all of his strength, he wasn't able to even dent the barrier and could only retreat in defeat. The Dazhou Kingdom's protector of the realm was extremely strong. He has long since stood at the apex of the Tianyuan continent. The barriers he could make are unbreakable to any saint ruler. I've heard that the Dazhou Kingdom's protector of the realm had reached the pinnacle a long time ago. When he disappeared, he must have been trying to make it past the final bottleneck. Seeing how it's been several hundred years, it seems that he was defeated before he could make that breakthrough. The peerless protector of the realm has long left this world. What a shame. How unfortunate for this type of expert to leave the world. The people all around them began to talk among each other as they talked about the barrier. Many of them could only sigh as they looked at this particular barrier in respect and adoration. For even a saint ruler to not be able to break apart this barrier, just how strong was the Dazhou kingdom's protector of the realm? One person whispered in disbelief. Suddenly, the entire crowd went quiet as if everyone had simultaneously shut their mouths. Following the silence, 5 white-robed elders suddenly came dropping down from the skies gracefully. From this, Jian Chen felt as if these men were immortals descending down onto the mortal plane. These 5 elders walked over to 5 different points on the barrier before a 5-star array began to grow brightly on the ground. At this moment, one of the elders in the middle cupped their hands. It has been 50 years since the last time. Today we meet once more, and next, we will be employing a secret method to temporarily close the barrier to the space gate. Everyone will be able to travel to Mercenary City afterward. The way to use the space gate should be familiar to everyone, so we shall not spend any more time explaining it. Afterward, the 5 elders began to open up the barrier. One by one, men began to slowly move forward into the large ripple of energy that was the space gate. Just like that, each one disappeared from sight. Quickly came the Tianqin clan's turn. At this moment, Jian Chen could finally see the space gate that was hidden at first by the barrier. The space gate was 3 meters tall and the energy that was moving around the space gate was strong enough to distort the space around it. The area didn't seem very stable and the light was shining out in intense rays with a mysterious glow. Underneath the space gate was a mysterious matrix with several Class 5 monster cores at certain points of the matrix. Each supply point of these monster cores had supported the space gate when it opened. This was a type of portal that allowed one to travel through space and linked 2 different places, and could be used to cross over the endless ocean. Chapter 288. Arriving at Mercenary City, the space gate was open for use, but it was not free of charge. Every single person had to hand over a few Class 5 monster cores. While the numbers varied, the average person only handed over a single Class 5 monster core in the end. This type of entry price would have made the Xia clan and the Tianhua sect in the Blue Wind Kingdom find it hard to pay, but this was where multiple experts of various kingdoms gathered, accompanied by Heaven Saint Masters. A few Class 5 monster cores wasn't something they would see as expensive. The Tianqin clan had 40 men in attendance, but over half of them were only bodyguards for the trip. So in truth, there were only 10 or so men actually going to Mercenary City. The Grand Elder led the group to the space gate and swept a glance at the men behind him, before passing several Class 5 monster cores to the Heaven Saint Master standing watch. There are 9 men total here, and we have 9 monster cores as well. The Heaven Saint Master from the Dazhou Kingdom took the monster cores with a smile. You may enter. I hope that you will have a satisfactory competition. The Grand Elder spoke a few more polite words with the Heaven Saint Master before walking through the space gate. With a single step, he was able to cross thousands of miles to the other side of the Tian Yuan continent. Afterwards, Jian Chen and Ming Dong followed behind Qin Shao in succession through the space gate. Aside from the Grand Elder, Tian Zhou and his 3 mercenary friends, Ming Dong, Jian Chen and Qin Shao, there was one other cold-looking middle-aged man. He wore a black robe, and had a face that seemed as if it had never once smiled before. Both of his eyes were exceptionally cold as they flashed with a dangerous gleam. Jian Chen, that man is called Qin Zhu. However, he is not a direct descendant of the Tianqin clan. He was an abandoned infant from the outside world picked up by my father. On the outside, he is cold and detached, but because he was raised by the Tianqin clan, his heart is loyal to us. Furthermore, because of his talent at cultivation and strength, as well as his hard work, he became an Earth Saint Master 3 years ago. Qin Shao spoke to Jian Chen in a low voice, a look of extreme admiration on his face. With that, the Tianqin clan crossed through the space gate. The moment Jian Chen stepped across, he could feel nothing but an invisible, protective layer of energy cover him before reaching the other side. He appeared in a dense forest, where hundreds of people had already gathered up. They had passed through the space gate to first. I didn't think that this world would have something as mysterious as the space gate. Just what kind of amazing methods did the exceptional expert who created this space gate use? Jianghu sighed in admiration. He greatly desired to reach such a goal, and looked forward to the day he'd reach such a level as well. Let's go, Mercenary City is right in front of us. After waiting for everyone to arrive, the Grand Elder led the group out of the forest. Since magical beasts weren't allowed to enter the space gate, everyone could only walk. Despite that fact, the traveling pace was quite fast. The forest wasn't very large. When they walked out of it, they entered a plain, where there were quite a few men like Jian Chen's group that were walking towards Mercenary City. From time to time, a few other groups riding magical beasts would pass by, sending dust flying into the air. There were some others flitting across the sky on some flying-type magical beasts as well. Everything was the same as when Jian Chen's group had first left the Tianqin clan. The only difference in their journey now was that they were walking rather than flying. On the road, Tianzhou continued to stare coldly at Jian Chen's back. If it were not for his worry about the Grand Elder, then Tianzhou would have most likely struck out at him. Seeing how Jian Chen had been ignoring him as if he hadn't noticed Tianzhou's existence, Tianzhou was angry enough to visibly gnash his teeth. His heart truly wished for Jian Chen to say something contradictory, that way, Tianzhou would be able to teach him a lesson. 4 hours later, the Grand Elder finally led the entire group to Mercenary City. Mercenary City was an enormous city that was spread over an extremely vast piece of ground. The only difference between Mercenary City and the other cities was that there was no walls here at all. One could enter the city from any direction. Instead, there was a giant golden barrier that glowed faintly around the city, protecting Mercenary City within. I want everyone to remember that no matter what, do not start a fight within Mercenary City or you'll risk a severe punishment. There are many powers in the city that we cannot afford to offend, so you would do well to remember this one rule. The Grand Elder spoke sternly to the group he was leading. Yes, Grand Elder. The men all cried out respectfully. With that, everyone began to walk into Mercenary City. Although there were no walls, the interior of the city wasn't all that much different from any other city, with various shops and taverns crammed together all over the city. The gathering of the mercenaries would start after another half-month, so the Tianqin clan had set up a temporary place of residency in a tavern. The next day, Qin Shao, Jian Chen, and Ming Dong all left to take a stroll around the city. The Grand Elder had disappeared by the second day, just like he had when they were back in the imperial palace of the Dazhou Kingdom. No one knew where he went, but he hadn't restricted anyone from going anywhere. The next few days were rather calm, but more and more people began to flow into Mercenary City. Every single inn was completely filled with men, and there were even many tents set up outside the city. In a flash, half a month had gone by. Early that morning, the Grand Elder finally appeared in front of the Tianqin clan once more, and led the group to the center of Mercenary City. Ming Dong, take the next few days to rest and be careful. Jian Chen called out to Ming Dong as he left. Ming Dong nodded his head before clapping him on the shoulders. I understand, make sure you come back safely. I'll be waiting for you. The Grand Elder turned to look at Ming Dong. Mercenary City is an extremely safe city. You will never find a city safer than this one. Just remember, do not start a fight within Mercenary City no matter what, or else no one will be able to save you. I thank the Elder for the warning. Ming Dong cupped his hands together respectfully. The group quickly arrived at the center of Mercenary City. It was an extremely large plaza, but it had already been filled to many people to count. Jian Chen could only guess there to be at least 100,000. In the middle, there was a 50-meter-tall tower with a single, vivid and lifelike sculpture of a middle-aged man. There was a mysterious charm to it that made it seem as if a real person had been petrified. Its finger pointed toward the distant horizon, as if trying to penetrate the heavens. The entire area around the sculpture, quite a few elders, as well as some middle-aged men with extraordinary presence, looking at the sculpture with both great respect and a hint of fear. Could it be that this sculpture is of Mercenary City's founder? I've heard that the founder was a person of unbelievable strength and has even been said to be a paragon under the heavens. It was said that nobody was able to rival him. Unfortunately, he has gone missing for many years, according to the ancient records. When the Age of Chaos descended upon the Tianyuan continent, humanity was on the brink of extinction after being faced off against hundreds of races. But when humanity was at the end of their road, a genius with enough power to shock the world appeared to fight against the experts of each of those races. In the end, the enemies of humanity were chased away and thus the humans of the continent were saved. This savior then established Mercenary City and spurred the development of mercenaries within the continent. The ancient records also said that the founder of Mercenary City was called Imo Yuntian. He was said to be the strongest person to ever exist. There are no later records of him. He probably left this world for another. By now, it's been 100,000 years since Imo Yuntian's era, but no one is capable of living that long. It is a shame that this once-in-a-millennium talent was unable to break away from the predestined end. One could see the elders discussing this from anywhere in the plaza. Every one of the elders looked toward the sculpture with reverence, and even the Grand Elder was no exception. Chapter 289. The Summoning of Ming Dong. Seeing how everyone was talking, Jian Shen looked at the large sculpture as well. Suddenly, a blue-robed elder came down from the sky. His facial characteristics were nothing out of the ordinary, but the very moment he had appeared, the world essence in the air suddenly went still. An overwhelming amount of pressure overtook it, causing everyone there to feel as if their heart would stop. When the elder appeared, everyone else suddenly ceased talking and descended into a period of silence. The elder floated in the air, standing high above even the heads of the Heaven Saint Masters. With an elderly voice, he spoke out, "I proclaim now that the bicentennial gathering of the mercenaries has officially started. Every participant should remain standing while every other person should move back." With the elder's words, the sudden movements of the crowd could be heard as the men who were older than the rules dictated immediately began to move away. "Jian Shen, take care of yourself." Ming Dong spoke to Jian Shen before following the ground to leave. As the amount of people lessened, there still remained several tens of thousands of people. Seeing how the group in front of him was beginning to lessen, the elder spoke out once more. "The gathering of the mercenaries permits those under the age of 50 to participate. In the case that someone over the age of 50 tries, then they will suffer the harsh punishment from the barrier and be annihilated. For those who are over the age of 50, leave now. This is your final warning." Several hundred men then left the group slowly with looks of dissatisfaction. With the final stragglers all gone, the elder waved his sleeves, causing several hundred black tokens to fly out toward the thousands of people below. Jian Shen grabbed onto one of the tokens that fluttered down to him. It was around the size of his palm and was created by a material unknown to him. It was unnaturally hard and didn't seem to be easily breakable. Furthermore, there was a strange energy that flowed in it. The elder looked down onto the crowd and spoke, "This is the command token. The first competition will be a free-for-all in a special region that you will be sent to after the world door opens. After that year, the top 500 people with tokens will qualify." Cupping his hands, he spoke up to the air, "May the elder open the world door." The world essence grew deathly still once more, along with everyone else suddenly going motionless where even the breathing of people could be heard. Suddenly, a massive amount of energy began to flow from the skies, attracting everyone in sight. Everyone could only see the first signs of energy being warped about in Midair, and in 2 brief moments, a strong multicolored light could be seen from the rapidly expanding space. Quickly, 100-meter wide hole could be seen with a large space of what could only be described as chaotic inside. The pitch-dark token in everyone's hands began to glow a dark light before enveloping everyone within it, elevating them up into the air toward the hole. "Ah!" Suddenly, a miserable cry could be heard as one of the men close to the tear in the sky began to melt quickly right in front of them. In a small amount of time, not even a single trace of their body could be seen remaining. For those over the age of 50, they will incur the wrath of the world door and will dissipate from the world itself. There is no need for panic, those under the age of 50 will be allowed in with no problems. The floating elder spoke. Many men began to look frightened as they began to struggle in midair. I give up. I don't wish to participate anymore." Unfortunately, they were already slowly rising into the air because of the energy that enveloped their body. They could only helplessly rise up into the air toward the hole. "I gave you a chance before, that opportunity has nigh passed. The elder spoke with a cold glare. Ah! Another pain-filled shriek could be heard coming from a man as he began to burn from the inside out alive. In a second, his body had disintegrated into the air. I beg of you, please let us go, please, I no longer wish to participate. A few men who were over the age of 50 that tried to take advantage of the crowd immediately tried to beg for forgiveness. The elder narrowed his eyes as he looked at them with an impatient look. With a wave of his hands, the balls of energy began to accelerate toward the hole in the sky. Ah! Following several cries of fear, those who were over the age of 50 were quickly burnt to ashes that were then burned up as well. This sight shocked everyone who witnessed it, and those who were older than 50 but had left earlier rejoiced to themselves secretly. Afterward, all those who were remaining began to disappear from sight into the hole. Let me through, I wish to participate. Suddenly, a voice behind the group could be heard as Ming Dong charged toward the ascending group with a pleading look at the floating elder. The stares of every person there concentrated onto Ming Dong as if he were an idiot. The distribution of the tokens had already been finished, and the group was already disappearing into the chaotic space to start the competition. Just what reason would the elder have to stop to allow a single person entry? Still raising into the air, Jian Shen turned to look at Ming Dong with a surprised look. He didn't understand just what reason Ming Dong had for suddenly wanting to join the gathering of the mercenaries. The floating elder furrowed his eyebrows together in annoyance as he looked at Ming Dong. Just as he was about to send him away, a sudden change in expression could be seen before a black token shoot toward Ming Dong's hand. Enter then. He spoke softly. In a split second, the elder's treatment of Ming Dong had done a complete reversal. His voice wasn't as cold as before. Instead, it was much warmer now. Those who knew of the elder on a personal all dropped open their mouths in shock as they looked at him in shock. It seems that youth is no ordinary person. A person whispered. Jian Shen looked on with shock as well as he saw Ming Dong begin to rise up into the air after them. He felt confusion in his heart as he tried to figure out just what had just happened. A flash of concern came over his face. The elder's words were quite clear. After they passed through the world door, it would be a free-for-all. With Ming Dong being a primary great saint master, the amount of danger he would have to face would be obscenely absurd. Even if they were together, Jian Shen would be powerless to protect him. The token in Jian Shen's hand brought him through the hole and dropped him in the middle of a thick forest. Everywhere he looked, all he could see were trees. Suddenly, multiple blurs came flashing down from the sky down next to him. Seeing just who was right next to him, Jian Shen let out a smile. Ming Dong, so it is you. How excellent, to think that you would be right besides me. The person who had fell next to him had been unexpectedly Ming Dong. As if shocked at the sudden shout, he reflexively brought out his saint weapon in preparation to fight. But as soon as he heard the familiar sound, a smile lit up his face as he absorbed his weapon. Jian Shen, so it's you. This is great, with us two combined, we'll definitely be able to forge ahead. Ah, Ming Dong, weren't you against participating in the gathering of the mercenaries? Why is it that you've suddenly changed your mind? That strong elder had unexpectedly allowed you to enter as well. Jian Shen's face held some confusion. Hearing this, Ming Dong's face went blank. Even I don't know why I suddenly decided to participate. I felt as if someone was calling me here and the feeling was growing stronger and stronger. In the end, I suddenly found myself unable to control myself before coming here. What, you felt someone calling you? Then can you still sense the calling right now? Jian Shen was shocked at this strange development. Ming Dong closed his eyes to concentrate before nodding slightly. I can still feel it, but the call is much weaker than before. Jian Shen narrowed his eyes in thought. Then can you sense where the call is coming from? From the east. Ming Dong pointed. Jian Shen looked toward the direction Ming Dong was pointing with a thoughtful glance. Then let's go there and see just what is calling you. With that, Jian Shen and Ming Dong began to walk toward the east. The place Jian Shen and Ming Dong were in was an isolated mountain range with a sinister environment as multiple poisonous insects and vipers could be found. Suddenly, Ming Dong's body plunged into the earth. he had unexpectedly stepped into a barely visible swampland. Ming Dong slapped at the swamp in order to fly out, but before he could move, his face suddenly winced. Something has bitten onto my leg, help me. With great shock, Jian Chen immediately grabbed onto Ming Dong's shoulders. Ming Dong immediately flew into the air, and at the same time, a poisonous viper as thick as Jian Chen's head followed after him with both of its fangs clamped tightly onto Ming Dong's legs. Jian Chen's eyes flashed as he brought out his light wind sword. With a quick slash, the snake was cut into several pieces, causing blood to rain down below. Jian Chen caught Ming Dong as he fell from the sky. Although the snake had been cut apart from him, the head of the snake was still attached to Ming Dong's legs. With another wave of his hand, the sword in his hand flashed once more before splitting the snake head in two. As for the area where the snake had bitten, the venom had already entered Ming Dong's wound, turning the immediate area around it blue while rapidly spreading. Ming Dong took out a white bottle from his space belt and began to sprinkle the area around it while muttering, "It's a good thing I bought some antidote from Walrant City. This type of antidote is quite famous around the continent that can cure hundreds of poisons. The only bad thing about it is its price." Jian Chen looked at the wound on Ming Dong's leg. "Are you able to walk then?" After treating the poison, Ming Dong began to flex both of his legs before smiling. "It's a good thing the wound isn't too deep." "There is no problem, let's keep moving." "Be careful then, we'll keep going, but we don't know what's in this place yet. There's still plenty of people we have yet to see," Jian Chen said. "Wait a moment." Ming Dong walked up to the carcass of the snake before cutting it open. Extracting a monster core from it, he laughed. "This type of stuff shouldn't be thrown away, or else it would be a waste of money." Jian Chen couldn't help but laugh. The snake was only at the Class 3 level, so a Class 3 monster core was not something he had thought to be valuable. After this harrowing experience, the two continued on their journey with caution. Although they were very cautious, the hidden dangers of the area continued to surprise them as they continued. The areas that seemed to be solid ground turned out to be swamps that acted like quicksand. Even Jian Chen had been victim to this several times, but he had been able to quickly escape. While in the mountain range, they would come across a few magical beasts. Most of them were Class 3 or Class 4 magical beasts, and the majority of them were quite poisonous. Jian Chen and Ming Dong continued forward for another half-day before Jian Chen suddenly halted. His ears began to tremble as he waited for movement. After a moment, Jian Chen let out a smile. "After half a day of walking, we've finally come across another person. This place is quite large for us to take this long to see a person if there is several 100,000 people here." "Jian Chen, there's someone nearby?" Ming Dong looked at Jian Chen with surprise, but there was a look of joy on his face. Jian Chen nodded his head. "Correct, there's just one person not too far away from here. From the sounds of things, he's coming toward us." "How strong do you think he is?" "If he's an Earth Saint Master, then we'll be in trouble." Ming Dong had a serious look on his face now. Jian Chen clapped Ming Dong's shoulders casually. "Don't you worry. The amount of Earth Saint Masters under the age of 50 is quite low. How could it be that easy to come across one? Let's go see just how strong this person is and just how we'll obtain his token." Chapter 290. True Sword. Jian Chen and Ming Dong continued to walk. After walking for a little while longer, they quickly came across the other person. The man looked to be a tall but skinny middle-aged man that was dirty-looking all over and quite miserable. The tree branches had already cut away at his clothes, revealing the bloody scratches underneath. Clearly, he had taken a large amount of pain from the environment. When the middle-aged man noticed there was someone around, he instantly grew alert. In the next second, he took out his saint weapon, but the moment he saw that the two in front of him were merely youngsters, his vigilance immediately lowered. After half a day, I've finally come across people. I must say, this place is so large that even after walking for half a day, I came across no one else. Just how strong of a person does one have to be to create such a place like this?" The middle-aged man brandished his sword with a smile. His face had slackened as his eyes stared at Jian Chen and Ming Dong with a strange glint. Jianshen laughed as well before saying, "That's right. This place is truly large. After walking for half a day, we've finally come across a lone person. It seems that we were fated to meet. Fellow brothers, just what is your name?" The man began to smile in a seemingly harmless way. "Seeing how we have never met before, it would be inconvenient to tell sire my name." Jianshen laughed. "Fine then." The man replied casually. Looking to and from Jianshen and Ming, this gathering of the mercenaries isn't a good place to be. There are many hidden dangers to be experienced. This isn't the place for two youngsters to be, most especially. You two would find it best to immediately leave this place. Of course, the 2 tokens you both have will bring you trouble. Why don't you hand them over to me so I can bear the responsibility for you?" With that, the middle-aged man lifted his sword and started to walk over to Jianshen and Ming. Jianshen let out a thoughtful smile before taking out the token from within his space ring. Waving it at him, Jianshen smiled, "If you want it, then you'll have to take it." Seeing the token appear within Jianshen's hand, the middle-aged man's eyes began to shine. Immediately looking at Jianshen's hand, he saw the space ring that was adorned on his finger. A space ring. The man cried out in shock. Growing serious, his eyes couldn't conceal the pure greed behind them. "No, little brother. That space ring currently in your possession will bring you trouble as well. Why don't you hand both the space ring and the token over to me? I'll keep the both of them safe. I can guarantee their safety if you do. Not only that, but it will be one less danger to your life." The middle-aged man couldn't help but smirk. Even his voice began to tremble at the sight of the 2 prizes in front of him. To him, Jianshen and Ming were both easy targets because of their age. No matter how strong the 2 might be, he was already dead set on pursuing them. Jianshen laughed involuntarily before looking at the man in the eye and sneered, "You couldn't even cheat a 3-year-old child with your words. You must be rotted in the brain to think that we are such idiots." Ming cursed at him from the side of Jianshen. The man's eyes began to flash dangerously as he revealed a cold smile. "Fellow brothers, I was only just thinking what was best for you. Those items aren't safe on you." With that, the man walked even closer so that he was 10 meters away now. With the giant sword in his hand, it began to radiate energy as he began to prepare to attack. Jianshen looked with disdain at the man. He was only a peak great Saint Master, someone not worth being worried about. "The items are in my hand. If you have the ability, come and take them." The man's eyes flashed dangerously as he laughed, "So it seems you two are quite obstinate. Then allow me to come and take them." The saint weapon in his hand began to fluctuate wildly as it flew at Jianshen's heart. His action was meant to kill without remorse or second thoughts. A small sliver of killing intent leaked from Jianshen as the light wind sword immediately appeared in Jianshen's hand. In another moment, the sword disappeared in a flash and broke the other man's saint weapon with a large metallic sound. With his saint weapon broken, the man spat out a mouthful of blood as his face grew white before falling to the ground. Jianshen had snapped his saint weapon in 2 with a single strike. This was the equivalent to crippling the man's dantian, causing him to lose all of his cultivation as well as causing a tremendous amount of damage to his body. How? How is this possible? Seeing the broken remains of his saint weapon, the man's face was shocked. This was too strong of a strength, causing him to be stunned. To make matters even worse, the one responsible for breaking his saint weapon was only a 20-year-old youth. Even Ming, who was standing by Jianshen's side, was shocked to the point of disbelief. Seeing just how Jianshen was able to break a peak great Saint Master's sword in 2 was just too frightening for him. Just how could you have so much strength at such a young age? Are you a wolf in disguise?" The man looked at Jianshen with hatred as if he had been unjustified, but as he spoke his voice was growing weaker and weaker. "We are not hiding in disguise at all. This is the result that you have brought upon yourself." Jianshen laughed. Then walking up to the man, he said, "Bring out your things immediately. This way, you'll at least have a chance to live. Otherwise, I'll kill you right now." The man's mouth began to drip with blood as he looked at the broken parts of his saint weapon. With a face full of regret, he slowly pulled out his space belt and placed it to the side. Jianghu picked at the space belt with his sword before grabbing the token from within. He didn't see anything else of value, confirming that the man was truly poor. Shaking his head in dejection, Jianghu threw the space belt on the floor before leaving with Ming. Jianghu, just how strong are you now for you to be able to break the saint weapon of a great saint master with one strike? This is something only an earth saint master could do. On the road now, Ming finally asked the question that he had been holding in for so long. Jianghu laughed. Back when I left the Tianqin clan for some time, I made a breakthrough to become a first cycle earth saint master. What, you've already made a breakthrough? Ming asked with shock. He didn't dare believe his ears. An earth saint master was the result of a great saint master risking death to cross over. The passing rate was only 10% to become an earth saint master, but this youth had somehow managed to do it. With Jianghu's age not even reaching 25 and becoming an earth saint master by then, this was truly an earth-breaking achievement. If news of this were to spread, then it would cause an undeniably large boom of shock. After he spoke, Ming was confused, so he asked, "What does it mean to be a first cycle earth saint master?" He had no idea that the earth saint masters were categorized differently. Jianghu began to explain. Saints up to the earth saint masters are categorized into 3 different tiers: primary, middle, and peak. The moment one becomes an earth saint master, the categorization becomes different. There are 6 different parts. The lowest class is the first cycle while the strongest class is the 6th cycle. Ming looked on with understanding. I didn't think that even earth saint masters would be classified in such a way. If you didn't tell me, I never would have known about it. Suddenly, Ming had a thought. Jianghu, just what attribute do you have? Hearing this, the light wind sword immediately appeared in Jianghu's hand as he showed off the shiny gleam. The light wind sword began to emit a hazy silver glow that continuously glowed in the sky. It was almost as if it was forming an insanely sharp sword with sword chi, and the moment the sword chi touched Ming body, he immediately felt as if thousands of swords were cutting into him for an undesirably painful feeling. My saint force doesn't have any attribute, this is all pure sword chi. Jianghu said. Sword chi wasn't rare by any means, practically everyone knew of it. It was just the sword's equivalent of saint force and had a tremendous killing power that could make a long-distance attack. This was what true sword chi looked like. What many others had was only what the sword made, thus was not strong enough to be called sword chi, it could only be called energy. This was because the energy was not strong enough nor had the same sharpness of sword chi. Jianghu's sword chi was incomparably sharp, intense, and quite potent. True sword chi was able to strike at a further distance than condensed energy that replicated sword chi. Furthermore, true sword chi didn't require a sword to use, instead, one could use their finger to cut a tree or rock. Jianghu didn't know when his saint force had been able to turn his energy into true sword chi. It seemed to be an innate thing. The credit could only be given to the sword spirits within him. What a strong amount of sword chi, it's completely different from all the rest. It felt as if it were as strong as a fire saint force attack. Ming gasped. The two began to talk for another 4 hours as they continued to walk around the forest until they reached a recent battleground. The ground was filled with blood and there were 2 corpses nearby filled with injuries. From the injuries, it could be seen that it was done by humans. And not too far away were their space belts. Ming looked at their space belts before saying, "Their tokens aren't in here, just a few things. There's nothing of value, it would appear someone else has already taken them." Looking all around himself, Jianghu noticed that there were multiple footsteps leading in a single direction. "Let's go, it's best for us to first find out just what was calling you. My intuition says that whatever is calling you, it's for a good thing," Jianghu said. "Okay then. I too wish to find out just what was calling me. To think I was unable to control myself and came here." Ming spoke with anticipation. Chapter 291, approaching the destination, the two men continued to walk through the mountain range. On the road, they came across the dead corpses of several magical beasts. Occasionally, they would see the corpse of one of the participants. Both were killed by men, and their bodies were stripped of anything of value. Ho! Suddenly, the sound of an enraged roar could be heard. By the sounds of it, it was currently fighting with several men as it roared at them. Looking toward the origins of the sound, Jian Che said, "There's someone fighting against a magical beast over there. It seems to be quite far. I estimate the distance to be at least 10 kilometers. With a small moment of hesitation, Jianshin said, "We would do best to be on our way. There is a year until the competition ends. That is plenty of time. Right now, collecting tokens is quite strenuous, so let's wait for the tokens to be collected in large amount by a small number of people. Then, we can just loot it from them and may potentially earn several tokens at once." Ming Dong had no objections to Jian Chen's proposal. Afterward, the two continued on their way without wanting to find any more trouble. After walking in the evil forest for another 2 days, they had finally reached the end of the forest. In that time, the two had came across several participants. When each one of them saw how young Jian Chen and Ming Dong were, they looked at them with contempt. However, the moment when they realized that the two were still competitors, they had immediately tried to rob their tokens, but in the end, they had their tokens stolen instead. For those people, Jian Chen had killed half of them and let the other half go. For those who had tried to kill Jian Chen and Ming Dong, Jian Chen had mercilessly killed them. For those who had tried to just take the tokens, Jian Chen allowed them to leave with their lives still intact. Because of Jian Chen's kindness, he hadn't embarrassed those he spared by just taking the token from them. As a result, the amount of tokens Jian Chen had went from 2 to over 20. This was quite the decent gain. After reaching the edge of the forest, there was an even field that expanded as far as the eye could see. The horizon could be seen off in the distance as Jian Chen took in the sight with a calm look. Ming Dong let out a breath of air as he tried to look off into the distance. "We've finally made it out of that demonic area. I was starting to think that this entire place was covered by forest." After walking through the demonic forest for 2 entire days, Jian Chen and Ming Dong's faces were filled with dirt and grime. Their faces had been covered by the dirt and their clothes ripped apart by the tree branches so that they no longer covered their bodies. There was no river in sight, however, nor any other sources of water. Jian Chen took out 2 bottles of water from his space belt and handed one to Ming Dong so they could wash themselves. With a new change of clothes, they began to travel once more. As the two headed toward the east for 4 hours, 3 figures could be seen running toward Jian Chen and Ming Dong. Jian Chen and Ming Dong paid no attention to them and continued to go about their way. After Ming Dong had found out that Jian Chen was an Earth Saint Master, he no longer felt extremely wary whenever someone approached them. The 3 men immediately flew past the two, and the very moment they did, they suddenly stopped right in front of them. 2 of the 3 men looked to be around 40 years old while the other looked to be 30 years old youth. Each one of them sent a cold glare toward Jian Chen. "Fellow brothers, what may I do for you?" Jian Chen asked. Seeing how Jian Chen and Ming Dong were both young but had calm look on their faces as if they knew something, the 3 men instantly guessed that Jian Chen was no ordinary man and didn't strike at them just yet. The 3 of them looked at each other in the eye before the 30-year-old youth cupped his hands together with a smile. "I can tell fellow brothers are not ordinary people, but in the end, you are only 2 people. In the case that a major group attacks you, it will be hard to retaliate. In that case, you 2 should join with us. We will be able to unite and increase the chances of survival drastically. Furthermore, whenever we collect tokens, we'll be able to split them among ourselves in accordance to strength. Are you 2 interested?" "Not interested at all," Jian Chen replied immediately before walking past them. At that response, the 3 men instantly flew at Jian Chen and Ming Dong to slash at the 2 without hesitation. With a snort, Jian Chen brought out his saint weapon with a shining silver light. Just as the 3 saint weapons were about to make contact, the heads of their owners immediately flew through the air. Jian Chen's sword was far too fast for the 3 to take notice. 3 pillars of blood flew into the air as the bodies of the beheaded fell to the floor in a rigid manner. As the heads fell, their eyes were opened wide in shock that would never go away in due to their death. Picking up their space belt with enthusiasm, Ming Dong picked out the tokens as well as 3 Class 4 monster cores. After killing the 3, Jian Shen and Ming Dong continued on their way unhindered. Half a day later, a fierce roar entered the eardrums of Jian Shen and Ming Dong. The both of them could see around 50 men battling each other from 2 sides. Within the battleground, a purple-robed middle-aged man could be seen standing at the front. The battlefield was a massacre, but while there were 50 people in total, the proportions were not equal. Over 30 men were fighting a dozen men. The differences in their strengths were extremely apparent, so in a flash, the battle was over with the dozen men all completely dead. Immediately, the survivors took off the space belts and began to take out the numerous tokens before handing them respectfully to the purple-robed man. "I present these tokens to the leader." The men cried out respectfully. The man took the 20 or so black tokens and placed them within his own space belt. Quantity is a quality in its own right. "Be at rest, if you travel with me, then I will guarantee everyone a good profit." With that, the middle-aged man turned to look at Jian Shen and Ming Dong. "Go and slaughter those 2 over there." The man pointed as he ordered all of the men after them. Without hesitation, the 30 men immediately took out their saint weapons and chased after Jian Shen. Seeing how the group was running at them, Jian Shen knew a fight was inevitable. "Ming Dong, take a few steps back." "Be careful then." Ming Dong didn't bother to try to sound brave and walked back 20 meters. As the 30 men within 50 meters of Jian Shen, he brought out his saint weapon and charged at the 3 without fear. To these people, Jian Shen was a tiger in a flock of sheep. His light wind sword struck out at their necks and instantly claimed their lives within seconds. Within a few seconds, the 30 previously alive and savage great saint masters had all been slaughtered with a single thrust to the neck which blood leaked from. The purple-robed man gave a small gasp in shock. In an instant, a purple-colored streak of light could be seen darting forward before reappearing 20 meters away from Jian Shen. With a look of astonishment, he looked at Jian Shen curiously as if not caring about how he had just killed 30 men. After a while, the man's shocked eyes grew larger and larger. He wasn't able to see how strong Jian Shen was. It was almost as if Jian Shen was covered by a black fog of smoke and couldn't be penetrated. What shocked the man even more was just how young Jian Shen was. "Little brother, for you to have such strength at such a young age, you are definitely a genius." The man smiled without a single hint of hostility. "Killing a mob is nothing." Jian Shen replied with a smile. "What a joke you are saying. In such a short amount of time, only an Earth Saint Master can kill 30 great Saint Masters with a single strike. For someone to reach that level at such a young age, how rare it is. Why don't you and I join forces? If we can do so, then this isolated world will be ours to rule." The man's face was quite kind as he smiled at Jian Shen. "My apologies." Jian Shen replied instantly. "AI." With a sigh, the man disappeared in a streak of purple light after looking at Jian Shen with a sad look. Jian Shen didn't bother to chase after him since he had no intentions of getting the tokens at all. "Jian Shen, that guy just now looks pretty strong. Isn't he an Earth Saint Master?" Ming Dong said as he watched the man run. Nodding his head, Jian Shen said, "Correct. He is an Earth Saint Master." It seems that he didn't feel confident and decided to flee. "Well then, let's continue on our way." Countless battles were occurring throughout the plains. Each battle contained various sizes of men and magnitude. By now, the competition had plenty of people uniting together seeking solo targets. In the next 3 days, Jian Shen and Ming Dong walked through the plains slowly. The two of them tried to hasten their way toward the direction of whatever was calling Ming Dong. Never once did they try to initiate a fight, but oftentimes Jian Shen had killed several of the competitors while simultaneously taking their daily harvests of tokens. By this point, the amount of tokens Jian Shen had numbered over the hundreds. After crossing the plains, Jian Shen and Ming Dong found a sinister-feeling mountain range. The mountains were desolate and barren without a single blade of grass living there. The entire place was filled with a faint pink vapor that concealed the entire mountain and seemed to carry a toxic nature within it that prevented anyone from entering. Chapter 292, Midair Shrine. The two men stopped a far distance away from the poisonous clouds as Ming Dong stared at with a serious expression. The summons is coming from this direction, but with this poisonous cloud blocking our path, we'll be unable to enter. Although I have some detoxification pills, I'm not sure it would work here. Jian Shen had a meaningful smile on his face as he patted Ming Dong's shoulders. Don't worry, these mere clouds won't be able to harm me, I'll be right back. Then if you would please try one of these. With that, Ming Dong took out a small bottle and took out a small medicinal pill from within before handing it over to Jian Shen. Declining the pill, Jian Shen said, I don't need this, the poison won't be able to harm me. Ming Dong doubted that Jian Shen had no fear of poison, but he knew it must be one of Jian Shen's secrets, so he didn't ask any more questions. With no more words being said, he followed Jian Shen within the mountain range. 20 meters within the poisonous smog, Ming Dong's face suddenly changed color before immediately puking out a stream of blood. Immediately running back, he took out a white jade bottle from within his space belt and took out a black-colored pill. Without a moment's hesitation, he tossed it into his mouth and swallowed. After swallowing the pill, Ming Dong's face grew to a better shade of color before looking at the poisonous fog with a serious look. This poison is too strong. The deeper we go, the stronger it gets. I've already used my best detoxification pill, but even then I'm afraid it won't protect me for more than 50 meters. We're unable to enter this place then. Jian Shen brought out a water canteen from his space belt silently. Cutting into his wrists, he began to drip the blood down into the canteen. Jian Shen, just what in heaven's name are you doing? Ming Dong cried out in shock as he watched Jian Shen's movement. Jian Shen wrapped up his wrist with a simple bandage and herbs before handing the canteen to Ming Dong. My blood is the best panacea for poisons, drink it. An incredulous look greeted Ming Dong's face as he spoke. What did you say? Is my hearing going bad? Your blood is the best panacea, just how could that be? Ming Dong's face was almost as shocked as if he just discovered a new world. Seeing the shock on Ming Dong's face, Jian Shen revealed a smile. I've long since accomplished the 1,000 immunity. There are very few poisons in this world that can injure me now. 1,000 immunity? Was there such a thing in this world? Ming Dong stared blankly with some doubt. Clearly he had never heard of such a thing. Drink it, that way we'll be able to walk on through this poisonous mist. Jian Shen spoke without explanation. Fine then, let's see just how effective this blood of yours is. Ming Dong took the canteen and drank all of the blood within. As soon as the blood entered his body, a strange energy rippled through the entirety of his body and flushed away the remaining poison within Ming Dong's body. Feeling the change within his body, Ming Dong's face was startled. Jian Shen, your blood really does have a detoxifying effect. It's even stronger than the detoxification pills I have. I can guarantee that if you were to sell your blood, then you would be able to make a sky-high profit. Hearing this, Jian Shen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Okay, let's hurry up and move forward. After drinking Jian Shen's blood, the poisonous cloud no longer bothered Ming Dong. Jian Shen followed close behind Ming Dong. The two continued on deeper into the mountain. The poison grew more and more toxic with each step they took, even their visibility became extremely limited as the cloud grew denser. Even with the toxicity steadily increasing to at least 10 times the amount as when they first felt it, it held no effect on the two. This caused Ming Dong to be utterly astounded at just how effective Jian Shen's blood was. Following the call, Ming Dong and Jian Shen walked in a linear path toward it. Occasionally, they would come across some poisonous magical beasts, but those were quickly killed by Jian Shen. After walking for 6 hours within the poisonous cloud, Jian Shen and Ming Dong finally arrived at an area not affected by the cloud. Right in front of their eyes was a graceful-looking valley filled with plenty of verdant grasslands. Compared to the barren wasteland outside, this area was filled with the abundant opportunities of life. Suddenly, Ming Dong turned grave. Crap, the call just vanished. I can't sense it anymore. Hearing this, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. This was a good omen for them. Taking in the view in front of them, he began to think, let's search the area, I'm sure the call is coming from this place. After thinking for a moment, Ming Dong said, okay, let's look for now and see if anything can be found. With that, Jian Chen and Ming Dong began to look all over the Greenlands in hopes to find the feeling that Ming Dong could feel before entering this area. Jian Chen, come quick, I found something. Suddenly, Ming Dong's voice called out from some distance away. Hearing his voice, Jian Chen immediately flew toward Ming Dong only to discover him standing right next to a multicolored array that was slowly emitting a faint amount of power. This is a space gate. Jian Chen spoke with shock. He didn't think that within this poisonous mountain range, there would be a space gate. The two looked at the space gate for a moment before Ming Dong said, why don't we head on through it? Jian Chen had a moment of hesitation before agreeing to follow along with Ming Dong's proposal. Immediately, Jian Chen deposited 5 Class 5 monster cores to power up the space gate. Once the gates opened, the two immediately walked through it. After walking through the space gates, the two men were suddenly greeted with a beautiful world where plants of different varieties could be seen and different wonderful fragrances could be smelled. With each breath, the two could feel themselves calming down. Suddenly, Jian Chen felt something above them and looked up. Straight away his eyes grew wide as his jaws dropped down in shock. An enormous palace floated 100 meters in the air. The presence radiating from this place was abnormal, almost as if this was a shrine that had always been cut away from the outside world. It was completely unattached to anything and floated freely in the air. Anyone who saw it would be unable to believe it and would be truly shocked. Ming Dong followed Jian Chen's stare upward and immediately had the same exact reaction as Jian Chen. Both of his eyes grew wide as a look of awe washed over his face as he stared at the shrine. Then, a white-robed elder fell down from the skies before landing on the ground in front of Jian Chen and Ming Dong. This elder had his white hair bound together behind his back into a long whip-like fashion. His entire body emitted a relaxed demeanor and it seemed almost as if he was immortal. The elder had a gentle smile on his face as he spoke, honored guests, our Lord has already waited a long time. Allow me to escort you in. Before waiting for either two to answer, the man waved his hands, causing a bubble of energy to wrap over Jian Chen and Ming Dong before they floated into the air toward the shrine. Up until this point, both Jian Chen and Ming Dong were speechless and dumbfounded. By the time the two regained their spirits, they were already well within the shrine gates. Honored guests, please follow this old man. I'll bring you to see the Lord. With that, the elder walked into the shrine. One moment. Honored senior, just what exactly is this place? Jian Chen cried out in a hurry. The elder's words had already confused him to the point where he was utterly mystified at the situation. This old man was merely here to greet the honored guests for the Lord. Everything else like the finer details would best be left for the Lord to answer. The elder laughed in the manner of a kind grandfather. Honored senior, are you sure you didn't receive the wrong person? We might not be the guests you are waiting for. Ming Dong cried out in worry from behind. This mysterious lord of the floating shrine was undoubtedly an extremely strong person. In the case that the two of them weren't the ones he was waiting for, then what would happen to them was a mystery. Hearing Ming Dong talk, the elder couldn't help but laugh. Just what type of person do you think the Lord is? The Lord possesses an unbelievable amount of power. Just how could he make such a tiny mistake? There is no need to ask any more questions. Please wait for the Lord. He will naturally answer them for you. The rest of your questions I have no rights to answer them. The two followed behind the elder quite nervously while occasionally looking around themselves. The shrine was extraordinarily large and had a large amount of power circulating within it. It was almost as if the shrine was made of pure energy for its architecture. There were plenty of halls within the shrine, but the entire place was still quiet. Not a single person could be seen, and it felt as if the three of them were the only ones there. Jian Chen and Ming Dong walked past several hallways before finally ending up in front of an extremely large hallway. By there, the elder cupped his hands and bowed to the closed doors. My lord, the honored guests have arrived. You may leave. A dignified voice could be heard. From the sound, the owner of this voice was male. "Yes, my lord." The elder bowed once more respectfully before departing, leaving Jian Shen and Ming Dong not knowing what to do next. "You two may enter." The grand-sounding voice spoke out once more from within. The next moment, the doors began to slowly open for the two to enter. With a mutual look at each other, the two men hesitated for a moment before walking into the hall. Chapter 293, Ming Dong's life experience. The shrine hall was extremely spacious inside, and aside from the throne, there was no other object within the place. Even the foundation pillars couldn't be seen, making Jian Shen wonder just how the roof was being supported. Right in front of the throne was a single white-robed figure whose back was facing them. There was no significant presence to be felt. It seemed as if he was already one with the world. Jian Shen and Ming Dong walked forward until they stopped right before the center of the hall. Cupping their hands, they bowed down to the elder. "We greet the senior." A long exhale could be heard from the elder, but that one breath had a single feeling of emotion to it. Afterward, the man slowly turned around, allowing Jian Shen and Ming Dong to see his appearance. He was a middle-aged man who looked to be around 40 years old with a highly capable look to him. The white-robed man looked at Ming Dong with a strange gaze that seemed to be able to penetrate the fabrics of the world's space and see through time itself without any blemishes. After some time, the middle-aged man sighed once more as his eyes moved from Ming Dong to the highest point of the heavens. 5,000 years. After 5,000 years. Etienne, I've finally found your descendant. I can at last achieve your final wishes. 5,000 years. Hearing that, Jian Shen and Ming Dong both looked on in shock. Could it be that this 40-year-old man was actually a 5,000-year-old eccentric? The words after that weren't heard by the two. As if remembering something from the past, the man let out another breath before smiling at Ming Dong. "Child, come here." Nervously, Ming Dong walked forward at a slow pace before saying, "Senior." Within the empty hand of the man, a dark green-colored jade piece could be seen. The very moment Ming Dong saw the jade piece, his eyes were glued to it. "My child, do you feel a strange sort of calling now, one that causes you to feel that you aren't capable of thinking independently?" The man spoke to Ming Dong with a soft voice. "Yes, senior." Even now, Ming Dong's eyes remained on the jade piece. "This jade piece has remained in my possession for 5,000 years and was given to me by your ancestor. This is the accumulation of his life's work. He told me that one day, if I were to come across one of his descendants, then I should give them this jade piece. Now, I can finally accomplish the final wishes of my old friend." The man's voice grew emotional as he spoke. With a wave of his hand, the jade piece was surrounded by a strange glow of light before floating slowly to Ming Dong. Seeing the floating jade piece, a strong sensation from within Ming Dong's arm could be felt as he felt it suddenly reach out to grab at the jade piece. This control was then broken as he snapped out of it with confusion. Right now, he was feeling something that left him completely mystified. Ming Dong continued to think for a moment in confusion before turning to look at the white-robed man within his voice. "Doubt, Senior, did this piece of jade truly belong to my ancestor? Who even was my ancestor? Is it possible that you found the wrong person? I've never even heard about my ancestors before in my entire life." The middle-aged man sighed once more with a grievance before he muttered, "Etienne, I didn't think that after 5,000 years, your descendants would have forgotten about you." As if heartbroken, the middle-aged man turned to look at Ming Dong. "My child, what is your name?" "Senior, my name is Ming Dong." Ming Dong replied. Ming Dong, A good name." The man thought for a moment before saying, "My child, allow me to tell you just what the situation was like for your Ming family 5,000 years ago." The man went deep into thought before tilting his head up toward the sky as if remembering something. 5,000 years ago, your Ming family was an extremely influential clan. At that time, your Ming family had a single genius. By the age of 30, he was able to make a breakthrough into the Earth Saint Master realm. He is your ancestor, Ming Etian. Your ancestor and I met by chance, but we quickly became good friends. Together, we formed a mercenary group and experienced many things together. We fought and killed together, fought in multiple battles, and even escaped from dangers together. Your ancestor and I quickly became good friends, inseparable by even death. 100 years later, Ming Etian and I both advanced to the peak Heaven Saint Master realm. By this point, the both of us grew weary of the mercenary life and secluded ourselves from the mercenary world. We came to this old forest deep within the mountains and left ourselves to the elements to prepare for our ascension. 10 years later, the two of us made breakthroughs to become saint rulers. With that, we toured the continent once more and explored many places while gaining many experiences. Another 10 years passed. Your ancestor and I both gained a huge amount of strength by that point, and so we decided to enter the death nest. Within the death nest, I was about to be hit by a curse. Your ancestor Ming Etian saved me. By sacrificing his body, he took the blow and saved my life. By this point, the man's face turned serious as if trying to hide the grievous look on it. The death nest is the most dangerous place within the Tianyuan continent. With our saint ruler level, we were unable to protect ourselves. The curse was far too strong, and even with Etian's strength, he was unable to resist the corrosion and died within 2 months. After knowing that his death was near, he was perfectly happy to spend the last few days within the Ming family. What he didn't think was that the moment he would return to the Ming family, everything had changed. The formerly glorious Ming family no longer existed. 30 years before, they had been exterminated by our former enemies, while the descendants of the Ming family had all been scattered without a single trace. Because your ancestor and I both disassociated ourselves from the continent without keeping in touch with anyone, we had long since lost any information regarding the Ming family. So after their extermination, we had no idea where they might be. This tragic conclusion caused your ancestor Ming Etian to feel an extreme amount of grief. He didn't think that within the final moments of his life, his own clan would come to a terrible end. Naturally, I had been at his side and knew what he was feeling. With all of this sorrow, it was enough for him to cry tears of blood. After that, Ming Etian and I began to search for the ones responsible for the destruction of the Ming family. Unfortunately, the two of us were not as strong as we used to be and were also just two people. Furthermore, we both had many enemies. After 30 years, everyone had already forgotten about the Ming family, causing clues to disappear. In a short 2 months, we were unable to chase down any clues, and there were no survivors that we could find to tell us anything. By now, the man's face had a look of sorrow as he spoke sadly. 2 months after, because of the powerful curse, Ming Etian departed from this world with regret. Before his death, he used his spirit to engrave all of his life experiences within this jade piece before entrusting it to me. He said that one day if I were to come across his future descendant, I was to hand over the jade piece. This was his final wish. Etien's death caused me an endless amount of grief. He and I were friends beyond friends and brothers among brothers. He had even died for my sake, so when he gave me the jade piece, I embarked across the entire Tianyuan continent in order to search for the ones responsible for the death of his clan as well as the survivors. For 300 long years, I painstakingly eliminated many people that might have been responsible, but there was still no news of the Ming family. To this day, this had been my biggest regret. With a long sigh, he looked back to Ming Dong, but the heavens were kind. Who knew that after 5,000 years, I would be able to come across one of the descendants of the Ming family? If Etian were to know of this, then he would be able to rest content in death. After listening to the man's tale, Ming Dong was speechless. The man's words were shocking and dealt a great emotional blow that was quite hard to take in. He had never thought that the Ming family would have such a glorious yet tragic story behind it. Even Jian Chen, who was by his side, was shocked. What shocked him even more was the fact that this man was a saint ruler that was over 5,000 years old. This caused Jian Chen to feel a great amount of respect for him. The man walked up to Ming Dong and looked at him like a senior would to his junior. It was also similar to as if he were looking at his own descendant. His eyes were filled with a tender emotion that was far too complex to explain. "My child, you must be here to participate in the gathering of the mercenaries. The man spoke to Ming Dong. Ming Dong could only nod mutely, he had not yet recovered from his shock. Are your mother and father still alive? The man asked. They are, my father and mother both live within a mountain village. My grandfather fell down a cliff and died while hunting. The man sighed in remorse before speaking. After the gathering of the mercenaries is over, please allow me to follow you back to your family. I will look after them in Etienne's place. There is no way I could allow myself to let the descendants of Etienne to live such bitter lives. As his brother, this is unforgivable, I owe him this much. This one thanks the senior. Ming Dong was overjoyed. With this man, an easygoing and fortuitous life for his family would be within his reach. After all, this man was a 5,000-year-old saint ruler and many heaven saint masters would respect him as their lord. With this expert, the life of his family would be smooth going. The sorrowful look on the man's face slowly disappeared as he smiled. My child, your ancestor and I were the best of friends, there is no need to call me senior. If you don't mind, please call me Uncle Tian. Yes, Uncle Tian. Ming Dong cried out respectfully. The man's smile grew warmer as he said, my child, your strength is still quite weak. For now, you should stay with me, I will exhaust all my strength so that I may be able to improve your strength. Whether or not the glorious era of the Ming family returns, that will depend on you. Do not disappoint your ancestor. Chapter 294, Godkiller ants. Afterward, Ming Dong stayed behind in the shrine, and despite his begging, Jian Chen declined to stay as well. Escorted by two elders, Jian Chen was sent to the space gate and returned to the poisonous cloud-filled mountain range. After reorienting himself, Jian Chen began to walk out of the valley. Just as he was about to exit out from the area, Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before heading back to the valley to set up his tent in a secluded area. His plans changed so that he could cultivate in peace for a moment. The valley was quite nice for its environment. It was elegant and quiet. Aside from a few butterflies that fluttered around from flower to flower, there was no other signs of life. All around the valley, the poisonous cloud spread throughout the sky and dyed the area pink. With the pink cloud floating around, no one entered the valley. It was as if the cloud was protecting the mountain range. The toxicity of the poison was extremely strong and none of the competitors were able to make it through into this valley. Furthermore, this place served to hold the space gate that would lead to the shrine. Those who wanted to come to the shrine would need to have the permission of the shrine lord, so Jian Chen felt relaxed. No one would be able to disturb him while he cultivated, so he began to delve deep into a cultivation trance. Within Jian Chen's dantian, the sword spirits continued to revolve around the multicolored stone. A strange amount of energy continued to radiate from the stone and blended in with the sword spirits. They grew larger with each passing second as the light was absorbed by the sword spirits. This process was extremely long, and if one didn't pay attention to the change, then one would never notice it. Within the mountains, Jian Chen spent almost 10 months cultivating. As those few months passed by, Jian Chen spent the time cultivating in his tent and practicing with his sword among the flowers. While his strength did not make an extreme leap, his saint force could not be used in a more efficient manner, increasing his battle strength by several times over. The time before the first round of the competition was about to end in less than 2 months. Jian Chen had been cultivating while waiting for Ming Dong to return, but by this point it was far too late for him to continue waiting. The remaining amount of time had to be spent trying to collect tokens. Arriving at the space gate, he looked at the mysterious array formation on the ground before letting out a single breath. After packing up his things, he left the valley. Jian Chen spent a day observing the array formation on the space gate, but because of the extremely mysterious pattern, he had given up. It contained a complex design and what might seem to be the mysteries of the world. It was almost as if each stroke of the array was pulling at the laws of the world that mystified Jian Chen with his limited comprehension of it. After leaving the small valley, Jian Chen wandered through the poisonous cloud while following the way back to when he had first arrived here with Ming Dong. Because of the poisonous cloud, the mountain was quite barren with very few plant life remaining. Every so often, Jianghu would come across some poisonous plants, but those were exceptionally rare. As he walked through the mountain range for 2 hours, a rustling sound could be heard coming from the distance in a concentrated amount. Upon hearing the sound, Jianghu stopped his movements and immediately turned toward the noise with a serious look. Because of the dense clouds, he could see less than 100 meters away. Quickly, a big shadow could be seen within Jianghu's line of sight. The shadows were like a current, with each different shadow moving along in a stream. Looking at the black figures, Jianghu's face changed. There was a single thumb-sized ant, and in the air, several other fist-sized ants with wings were quickly flying over. So those are Godkiller ants. Jianghu cried out before running away from them without hesitation. The Godkiller ants were well known within the continent. They were a strange race that weren't exactly magical beasts. By itself, a single Godkiller ant was not very strong. When they grouped up in large numbers, even a Heaven Saint Master would be surrounded and lose their life. So an Earth Saint Master like Jianghu would have no chance. Godkiller ants were very poisonous creatures and were also immune to the vast majority of poison. Very few would be able to do damage to them, and their outer skin was extremely thick and hard like steel. Anyone lacking in strength wouldn't be able to kill one. Furthermore, these Godkiller ants were capable of even swallowing Saint Force. Thus, anyone using Saint Force to protect themselves would be seen as nothing more but a decorational piece to these ants. Jianghu remembered reading about them within his books. Each one of them agreed that the best way to deal with them was to run away as far as possible. The venom of a Godkiller ant had an extremely strong anesthetic effect. The moment one was bit, the venom would circulate around the body and cause one to feel weak. They wouldn't be able to run away and could only wait for the Godkiller ants to gnaw away at their bodies until even the bones were gone. In the case one was bitten, then the probability of survival was 0% unless a miracle happened. Jianghu flew from the mountain range as fast as a wind-fueled fire. He had no wish to fight against the thousands of Godkiller ants. From behind, the Godkiller ants had already detected Jianghu's presence and began to give chase. The entire swarm began to migrate toward him in a continuous manner that would raise the hairs of anyone that heard it. In the air, fist-sized winged ants traveled faster than their grounded counterparts and led the chase after Jianghu at a speed that was far faster than what Jianghu was traveling at. Jianghu's speed was at the fastest he could travel. Flying through the mountain range, he tried to go faster, but despite getting a boost in speed after becoming an Earth Saint Master, the precipitous terrain of the mountain was far too uneven for Jianghu to build up proper speed. This was in no way better than the ants that were flying at him. Not too long after, Jianghu had been overtaken by a few Godkiller ants. Without a choice, he took out his light wind sword and began to strike out at them with several thrusts. With a series of metallic sounds, a large amount of the Godkiller ants fell from the skies. Their bodies split in two with black blood spilling out. Because of this delay, several other ants had already surrounded him. Several ants stepped over the dead bodies of their swarm and charged toward Jianghu without fear. Jianghu's light wind sword continued to swing outward in a series of intersecting movements that not only halted the advancement of the ants, but slowly carved a way out of the encirclement. Despite this, there were a few Godkiller ants that broke through Jianghu's sword and bit down onto Jianghu. The sharp teeth of one of the ants tore through Jianghu's skin that could normally prevent being slashed by a saint weapon like it was tofu. Jianghu ignored the bite and continued to slash his way out. If he were to stay trapped here, then when more ants were to gather, he would be stuck in a dead end. With a Herculean amount of effort, Jianghu finally broke free and charged away. His entire body flew out of the valley. At the same time, he raised a hand and completely smashed the head of the ant that had bitten him, causing black blood to splash everywhere. As for the venom that had entered Jianghu's body after he was bitten, the bloodstream in his body immediately purged away the venom so that it didn't cause him any harm. While the venom of a Godkiller ant was scary, it was no use against the venom of the silver-striped golden snake. Close behind, the flying Godkiller ants still pursued. Suddenly, just as Jianghu passed by a small cliffside, a 1-meter wide hole in the cliff suddenly shot out a red-colored python that flew toward Jian Chen with its mouth wide open. However, with Jian Chen's heightened awareness, he immediately shifted his body to dodge the python. With a raised fist, he smashed it down onto the python's head. The snake fell to the floor with a stunned expression after the blow to the head. Before it could even regain itself, it was quickly surrounded by the ants and was immediately torn apart by dozens of sharp fangs. Hiss! The python cried out in pain before its body began to rip. In the next second, its body flew apart and filled the sky with its pieces. Each piece of the gigantic python was quickly taken by the Godkiller ants. Numerous ants swarmed the pieces of the python, and within seconds, the python was picked clean so that even the bones were gone. Not even the spilt blood could be seen anymore. Jian Chen had long since disappeared from this place and escaped to a place outside of the Godkiller ants' perception. Outside the area of the poisonous mountains, a group of 20 were gathered there. Pointing at the place, each one began to guess what was inside. I say that there is definitely a treasure inside, but how do we get inside this strange place? A person asked. Just how could a godforsaken place like this have treasure? Besides, that pink mist is definitely poisonous. Just who would be able to get in? Such a poisonous mist wouldn't be here for no reason. This place is definitely strange and must hide some sort of secret. Could a strong expert be living here in seclusion? I've heard that a few of the seniors at an expert level would oftentimes install some high-leveled magical beasts and other safeguards so that they can cultivate in peace. So I'm fairly sure this is the case here. I can see your reasoning, but with this type of safeguard in place, the expert here must be a poison expert. I say we should leave this place at once. In the case that we disturb the expert here, then everything will go badly. Bah, how can you say such words? Who says we'll anger the expert or suffer from it? Haven't you heard of the words, a fateful encounter? In the case that this expert is generous, then we could possibly become his disciples and be the carps that have leaped the dragon's gate. In my eyes, this is a monumental chance. The 20 men continued to discuss among each other in front of the poisonous mist and continued to debate about just what could possibly be within. Hey, look! Someone's coming out. Someone's voice rang out. Immediately, everyone turned their heads to look at just who could be running out from the poisonous cloud in such a miserable manner. Chapter 295. Collecting tokens. That person isn't afraid of the poison? He must have a strong detoxifying pill or even a treasure that grants immunity. Look how weak he looks. He definitely took some blows within the mountains. I bet his strength isn't too strong. Then it's settled. Let's have him hand over his treasure or pill and go inside to check for ourselves. With so many people, we'll definitely reap some profit. The men all cheered in agreement as their faces lit up with excitement. Quickly, the figure came into view. His white robes had been torn apart, in some places blood dyed the white, red. Injuries could be seen everywhere on his young body, which was covered with some black liquid, and everyone could see that this youth couldn't be any older than 20 years old. This man was Jian Chen. After escaping from the poisonous mountain, Jian Chen took in a deep breath of fresh air. He had been chased by the swarm of Godkiller ants and was forced into a miserable situation, but he had been fortunate enough to escape. Looking at the 20 men standing some distance away, he calmly took a handful of dirt and wiped at his black-colored hand. Afterward, he took a towel from his space ring and began to wipe at it. That's a space ring. Seeing how Jian Chen took out a towel, a person cried out in shock as he realized just where it had came from. So he has a space ring? The entire group all lit up with excitement and greed as they looked at it with happy smiles. Immediately, a middle-aged man cried out to Jian Chen, "Kid, who are you, and how did you come running out of the poisonous mist here?" Standing up, Jian Chen looked at the group once more. Most of them looked to be around 30 to 40 years old, while their strengths ranged from the Great Saint Master to peak Great Saint Master level. Your question is quite strange. If I was able to enter the place, naturally I would be able to exit from the place. Jian Chen spoke in a carefree manner with a kind smile directed at the group. Not understanding the stare Jian Chen was giving them, the man continued to ask, "How were you not afraid of the poison? Just what did you use to be immune to it?" Jianshan laughed, "It'll be quite inconvenient to tell you." Hearing that, the middle-aged man gave a mutual look toward his friends. With a wave of his hands, the entire group surrounded Jianshan. "Kid, I don't wish to harm you, just hand over your space ring and tell us just how you were able to be immune to the poison. Then we'll let you go," the man ordered. "That's right, we are not ones for unnecessary slaughter. Seeing how you're this young, you still have a long life ahead of you. Just hand over your space ring obediently and tell us how you avoided being poisoned," a thin-looking man said. "Kid, seeing how unblemished your skin is, you must not be accustomed to pain. Be a good boy and tell us what we need to know. Otherwise your handsome face will be no more. Then, don't blame us for not being able to find a nice lady," another fierce-looking person said in a muffled voice. Although his words were straightforward, there was a sense of humor to them. Jianshan smiled at the group, "Seeing how you don't seem to be such bad people, I won't shame you. Hand over your tokens and I will guarantee that I will not hurt you." These words caused the group to be stunned. Everyone began to roar with laughter as one of them said, "How arrogant this child is, everyone come and shame him." "Allow me." A large man volunteered as he walked forward to raise a fist at Jianshan. Seeing the incoming fist, Jianshan shook his head before bringing up his right hand to grab at the fist. With a small amount of power, the sounds of bones breaking could be heard as Jianshan started to crush the man's hand. "Ah! Let go. You're hurting me." The man cried out in pain as he tried to tug away. This sight caused the other men to be shocked as their faces slowly grew serious. How fucking blind we are to miss that this kid is quite talented. "Brothers, get him." At this, the rest of the men took out their saint weapons to attack. Jianshan extended 2 fingers and had some sword chi shoot straight out of them, reaching a foot in length. With a faint light, the sword chi flickered once before disappearing from view. Within a single second, Jianshan had moved around each member at least once. As soon as he reappeared, the clothes of the men all instantly turned into cloth strips. In an instant, the neat and orderly clothes fell in piles beneath their feet and revealed their bodies without a single scratch. The 20 men were stunned. Staring blankly at the destroyed remains of their clothes, they all looked at Jianshan in utter shock. "Everyone, it would be in your best interest to hand over your tokens." Jianshan stood close by with a stunning smile directed at everyone. "Why you? You're an Earth Saint Master?" a man cried out in terror. There was a tone of utter disbelief in his voice as he asked to confirm his question. Hearing him, the other men all grew terrified as their eyes widened. They truly couldn't believe that this 20-year-old youth in front of them was somehow an expert of the Earth Saint Master level. Fuck. How unfortunate. To think that the first youth we see is actually an Earth Saint Master. How the heavens have forsaken us. A man sighed before throwing down his space belt at Jianshan. "The tokens are in there. I'm afraid that you will think we're hiding something, so feel free to look for yourself." After that, the other men also threw down their space belts with some hesitation. With a heavy heart and a crestfallen look, they looked down in despair, an opposite reaction to what they had before. With that, Jianshan took out the tokens and began to count them all. In total there were around 150 tokens. Without touching any of the other items, he handed back the space belts and left the place. The entire plains were filled with past battles. Dead corpses could be seen everywhere as Jianshan wandered through the entire place. In the past, he was able to easily grab tokens, but now that this round of the competition was coming to an end, practically all the tokens were within the hands of a few experts or a group of strong great saint masters. Those who were traveling by themselves or with a small group had their entire collection of tokens taken away already. 2 days later, while Jianshan saw many people, the profits were not that good. In total, he had only gained another 100 tokens. Although now he was emptying the space belts of everything else but food and clothes. Walking to a desolate area, Jianshan saw over 200 men fighting against each other. The battle seemed extraordinarily fierce and many people were already on the floor dying within their blood. After some time, the battle began to die down as 20 men remained. All of them were injured and had blood flowing down their bodies constantly. The 20 all belonged to the same group and began to clean up their wounds. A few of the more able-bodied men began to clean up the battleground to find some tokens. After the token collections were finished, the able-bodied men looked at each other and nodded. Straight away, they flew at the injured comrades and slashed at them. The brethren who had been fighting at their sides grew startled before falling to the ground after being slashed. How could you be this way? The one who had his heart stabbed immediately looked at the other man with disbelief. You've already sustained heavy injuries. You're not long for this world, I'm only hastening your journey there and saving you the suffering. One of them spoke. You'll receive judgment for this. As he spat out these words, he fell to the floor dead. Afterward, the survivors took the tokens from his dead body and left the area. Just as these men were about to leave, a white-robed youth suddenly appeared out of nowhere and blocked their paths. This person was Jian Qin. Fellow brothers, how merciless you are. For the sake of a few tokens, you were willing to kill a friend that fought alongside you. Jian Qin spoke calmly without a single emotion in his voice. Who are you? Seeing Jian Qin appear, everyone instantly went alert before grabbing their saint weapons as they stared at him menacingly. Your killer. Jian Qin immediately lifted his arm as a 2-foot-long blade of sword chi shot from his fingers. In a flash, he flew toward the men and began to slash at their necks. Some of them were great saint masters and were completely unable to keep track of Jian Qin's movements. By the time their necks had been slashed, they could only fall to the ground in shock. Walking up to the dead corpses, Jian Qin counted a total of over 200 tokens within their space belts. This was much better than yesterday's harvest. Suddenly, the dirt all around Jian Qin sprung up to envelop him, blocking his sight. An unknown figure with Earth Saint force all over his body shot out with his blade shining in the light as it slashed down toward Jian Qin's head. With a snort, Jian Qin closed his eyes so that the sand wouldn't get into them. The light wind sword immediately appeared in his hand and carved a way out in a single stroke. Ding! With the earth flying everywhere, Jian Qin's light wind sword made contact with the enemy's sword with a loud clanging sound. Chapter 296, Ballistas seeing his sword meet resistance, the enemy cried out in shock before bringing back his sword once more to slash at Jian Qin. Jian Qin's sword disappeared again in a flicker of movement, allowing the other person could only hear the sounds of a sword being rapidly thrust at him. Despite the earth blocking his vision, with his strength, it was not too influential on his fighting ability. In a flash, Jian Qin and the man had exchanged several blows before taking advantage of the man's opening to thrust his sword forward with lightning speed toward his throat. The sword was far too fast, and in an instant it was already right in front of the man's eyes. The strong amount of sword chi flicking off the tip of the sword was already starting to bite into his throat. The man cried out startled, but with his strong strength, right on the verge of his own death, he quickly brought his saint weapon back. Bringing it across his neck to protect it, he simultaneously kicked Jian Qin back. The light wind sword stabbed into the man's sword and left a deep dent in it while Jian Qin's left hand smashed against the man's leg with a fierce amount of saint force. Kacha! The sounds of bones breaking could be heard as the man's leg instantly fractured. Straight away, the force of the blow sent the man flying backward away from Jian Qin. Jian Qin took the opportunity to leap out of the earthen enclosure and stared at his attacker. He noticed that the man was a brown-robed middle-aged man with a relatively small build but had fierce eyes. He had a long beard and a sword that was almost as long as he was tall. Jian Qin stared coldly at the man. At what time does an Earth Saint Master have to attack someone from behind as a sneak attack? Hearing this, the middle-aged man snorted, "Humph, don't be so righteous. This is a survival of the fittest, whomever gets the final victory is the winner, damned be how he does it." The man stared at Jian Qin and spoke, "Kid, you don't look that old, but your strength is unbelievable. So young, yet already an Earth Saint Master. Thank you for your praise. Jianshan smiled. Now do you wish to hand over your tokens, or shall I take them from you? How impudent for you to want to take my tokens. Let's see if you have the strength to do so. The man snorted before waving his sword in preparation to fight once more. At the same time, a large amount of earth-attributed Saint Force began to condense over his body like armor, giving him a much stronger form of defense. Jian Chen's sword was unbelievably fast. In a moment, a single sword strike could be seen in various angles. Each shadow image was incredibly hard to differentiate from fake to real. Right now, under Jian Chen's attacks, the middle-aged man barely had any time to breathe. Desperately retreating backward, his body was filled with sword cuts as his earth-attributed Saint Force armor had almost been destroyed. He would not be able to last any longer. The man was dumbstruck now. He didn't think that Jian Chen would be this strong even though he was an Earth Saint Master. Despite them being at the same level of strength, he wasn't able to fight against him at all, especially against Jian Chen's sword. The sword was almost far too fast for him to react against, and the amount of mirror images from the sword already left him in a daze. Knowing that he was outmatched, he gave up his will to fight. Leaping away from background, he melted into the ground out of sight as a means to escape. This strange move of the man had caused Jian Chen to be stunned. Seeing just how the man disappeared from sight into the ground, Jian Chen had been astonished. This was the very first time he had seen such an escape method. The man's escape technique didn't render him completely intangible. With every single movement he took, a small pile of dirt could be seen rising up. Anyone with sharp enough eyes would be able to detect it. Smirking slightly, Jian Chen leaped 30 meters forward into the air and then brought down his shining light wind sword onto a small packet of dirt with lightning speed. PCH. As the sword slammed into the ground, a large fountain of blood sprayed into the air. Jian Chen's sword chi had somehow pierced into the middle-aged man. The man didn't have time to be shocked. Trying to move faster to escape now, he learned from his mistakes and dove deeper into the ground where it would be impossible to detect him. While Jian Chen was unable to fly in the air, he could at the very least hover in the skies for a small amount of time at the cost of a large amount of Saint Force. Floating 30 meters in the air, his cold eyes stared down at the ground looking for any possible direction the man may have escaped in. With the man diving deep underground, it was impossible for Jian Chen to detect him. A split second later, a small patch of grass shook slightly. With a start, Jian Chen immediately stabbed downward with no hesitation as the sword chi from his sword began to cover the area. The sword chi flooded the area like water in a bucket and began to slash apart the entire area. "You bastard, don't be too excessive." The man cried out as he leaped out from the ground with blood all over his body. Descending to the ground, Jian Chen charged at the man without another word. The middle-aged man had launched a sneak attack on him earlier, and if it weren't for the fact that the man wasn't that strong, then his blade would have killed Jian Chen and left him a lifeless being. Furthermore, the middle-aged man was an Earth Saint Master who had been acting with prudence. With over 10 months gone, this man must have collected plenty of tokens, which was what Jian Chen wanted. "Fuck, you bastard, I'll remember this day. I'll return this favor back to you 100-fold. The man swore angrily. Without hesitation, he dove back down underground and out of sight. "Where do you think you're going?" Jian Chen spoke. With some difficulty, he forced the man out from underground once more with his sword. Jian Chen's sword danced in his hand as a strong amount of sword chi flew toward the man to strike him. Dirt flew into the air as a spurt of blood shot out from underground. While the man was using this underground technique to escape, he couldn't go too deep and his movements were still visible. It was so noticeable for Jian Chen that he was able to land such a blow. Once again, the man was forced up from the ground. Without a single chance to catch his breath, Jian Chen's sword chi instantly shrouded the area where the middle-aged man stood. The man tried to brace himself for the worst, but with his heavy injuries, he was extremely slow. Now that he wasn't as nimble as before, he could only defend against 2 sword strikes before ultimately getting a 3rd sword strike through his shoulder. Stifling a pain-filled shout, his face twitched erratically in response to the injury. At that moment, the fourth strike came at him. With panic, the man dodged to the side, causing the sword to pass by his neck without a problem. However, before the man could react, the sword shifted toward his neck and slashed it. PCH. Another pillar of blood shot into the air as the man's head was cut, causing blood to fly everywhere. Taking the space belt from the man, Jianghu counted a grand total of 400 tokens. Other than that, there were also a single purple card, 3 Class 4 monster cores, and several hundred purple coins. This was an extremely bountiful harvest. After collecting everything, Jianghu left the area. Sauntering about the plains, Jianghu continued to collect tokens on his journey, but things weren't as profitable as they were when he had taken the tokens from the short man last time. After 3 days of traveling, Jianghu had amassed around 500 tokens. Although he had came across countless of competitors, all of their tokens had already been taken by someone and they had been left with only the bare essentials to live. 3 days later, Jianghu had crossed the plains only to arrive at a vast grassland. Each blade of grass was roughly half as tall as a person, making anything below the waist hard to see. In the grass, there were countless of hidden vipers. There were even some vipers around a meter wide with poison so potent, they could kill a great Saint Master in 4 hours. They were by nature very secretive, concealed in the grass without moving, they wouldn't even emit a single sound. With the support of the grass, no one would be able to detect that these vipers were there. Occasionally, Jianghu's leg would feel a small nip, but it was inherently useless. The 1,000 immunity he had rendered him immune to the venom. At this moment, a sharp stinging sound could be heard whistling through the air. Jianghu's eyes narrowed coldly as the light wind sword appeared to block the incoming strike. Clang! A strong shock could be felt running through Jianghu's arm as it went numb. Glancing at what struck him, he could see a single black crossbolt made of pure steel forged in a unique way to make it even harder. Whoosh! Another whistling sound could be heard. A single arm-sized crossbolt flew out from the grass and toward Jianghu. Jianghu's light wind sword danced in the air as it struck against the crossbolt, causing yet another vibration to travel up Jianghu's arm and numb it. After blocking the crossbolt, Jianghu leaped into the air and flew across the tip of the grass in the direction the crossbolts were shot from. During that time, the crossbolts continued to fire at Jianghu. Jianghu would dodge each shot without blocking a single one. On the way, there had been a total of 10 crossbolts that Jianghu was forced to knock away and 20 crossbolts he had dodged successfully. Quickly, Jianghu arrived at where the crossbolts were being shot at only to see 3 ballistas hidden within the grass while 5 middle-aged men continued to scramble about to refill the ballistas with ammunition. Jianghu had seen these types of ballistas before in Wake City, these were quite high quality. The force a ballista could shoot out a crossbolt that was quite strong and could penetrate through several Class 2 magical beasts with a single shot. These were even capable of killing a Class 4 magical beast, and even a great Saint Master wouldn't be able to knock aside a crossbolt shot from one of these. However, what Jianghu couldn't imagine was how these men managed to bring these contraptions into this place. Chapter 297, Great Fight. Seeing how Jianghu hadn't been hit and was instead getting closer and closer despite the crossbolts, the men resupplying the ballistas immediately grew startled. Crap, this is an Earth Saint Master, let's get out of here. One of the men cried out at the others. Abandoning the 3 ballistas, they all scampered away in separate directions so that Jianghu wouldn't be able to get them all at once, thus increasing their chances of surviving. Only an Earth Saint Master would be able to make their way through an endless barrage of crossbow bolts. With a cold sneer on his face, Jianghu concentrated his sword chi to extend out from 2 of his fingers. The sword chi shot out from his fingers and flew at one of the men like a streak of lightning, before striking him straight through the throat and leaving a cavity behind. Jianghu shot another 4 bursts of sword chi out at the men who were all running away from him. Slowly, their bodies fell to the ground, allowing Jianghu to inspect their space belts. Afterwards, Jianghu happily collected 30 tokens from the 5 of them with a satisfied expression on his face. For 5 great Saint Masters to be able to collect 30 tokens was an incredibly difficult task at this point. Seeing how they were able to kill countless people within this hidden area with the ballistas, the chances of anyone with the power of a great Saint Master and below surviving was a low 1%. By the second day, Jian Shen had finally made it through the grasslands, only to come across the footprints of a large group of people. Looking at their tracks, Jian Shen could estimate that there were about 100 people, truly not a small group. Jian Shen began to follow their tracks only to come across a precipitous mountain range. The mountain was barren with no traces of grass. The highest peak of the mountain was like a sword that speared into the blue sky, and seemed extremely perilous to climb. Observing the tracks once more, Jian Shen began to climb up the mountain range. The moment he started to climb, Jian Shen could hear the faint sounds of battle from farther away. Surveying the area, Jian Shen could only see several shelters within the mountainside, but he couldn't see where exactly the fight was taking place. The sound was reverberating all over the area, making it too difficult to pinpoint the origin. Still taking in what was around him, Jian Shen's eyes finally landed on a 50-meter-tall mountain peak. With a sudden leap forward, Jian Shen began to travel there. At the top of the peak, Jian Shen could suddenly see a large group of people fighting 5 kilometers away. At the front of one group was a single, azure-robed man weaving through the group of enemies so fast that they weren't able to even touch his clothes. With each strike from him, his enemies fell to the ground dead. Jian Shen's eyes flashed several times as he watched the man fight. The man seemed to be a wind-attributed Earth Saint Master who was killing hundreds of great Saint Masters with ease. The battle continued for some time, until less than 20 great Saint Masters remained. Those survivors knew they were no match for him and lost their wills to fight. Throwing down their space belts, they instantly fled in every direction. Instead of chasing them, the Earth Saint Masters began to collect all of the tokens within the space belts. Abruptly, Jian Shen leaped down from the 50-meter peak towards the man. Suddenly detecting the presence of Jian Shen as he approached, the man could tell right away that this new person was an expert of a high level. With that feeling, the man began to collect the tokens at an even faster rate. Rapidly descending down the peak, Jian Shen flew toward the middle-aged man. Within a few moments, he had traversed the 5 kilometers, and he rapidly stabbed at the middle-aged man with his sword. Unable to clean up the rest of the space belts, the man brought out his long sword and enhanced it with his Wind Saint force before slashing at Jian Shen. The two Saint weapons made contact with each other, causing a strong shockwave to emerge from the collision. This shockwave was so strong that a spiderweb of cracks began to appear beneath their feet. With that one strike, Jian Shen's foot struck out at the middle-aged man. Jian Shen's light wind sword shone with a hazy glow as he slashed at the man 3 times. The gleam in the man's eyes intensified as he shouted, "What an exquisite sword technique!" With his own sword that began to glow, he blocked Jian Shen's sword. With the Wind Saint force, the man's speed was no slower than Jian Shen's. The rapid movements of the two fighters and their swords began to crack the nearby rocks and even the ground, as a strong gale began to kick up. The sword in Jian Shen's hand traveled faster and faster as his swordplay began to grow stranger and stranger. This rapid change of movements caused even the wind-attributed Earth Saint Master to feel a great strain as he blocked the sword that slowly forced him to a greater disadvantage. With each strike, the man's face grew more serious. He hadn't thought that he would meet such a young and strong individual today. Despite Jian Shen's age, he could already pressure a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master to a devastating degree. Suddenly, Jian Shen's sword blurred, immediately transforming into several mirror images that were so numerous they covered the sky and entrapped the man within. With a grave expression, the man flew backwards as the sword in his hand began to glow with a cyan light. He pointed his sword up at the sky and cried out, "Wind burst." The cyan light on the sword scattered into thousands of pieces before melting away into the air. Suddenly, the area around them erupted as stones began to float into the air before forming a giant tornado with Jian Shen at the center. As if suddenly weighed down by a great restriction, Jian Shen felt the tornado pull at his body from every direction as it tried to blow him into the air. However, Jian Shen firmly planted himself to the ground and did not budge from his spot. Although he was suffering from the suction of the tornado, Jian Chen forced himself to stay down on the ground. If either of his legs were to give way, then his entire body would be sent flying into the sky. The man's sword dazzled in the light. With the sword still held straight upwards, he cried out once more, "Squall dance." With that command, the squall flew faster, almost as if each blade of wind was a sword that cut into Jian Chen's body. His clothes were already being slashed apart, and the tiniest of cuts could be seen on his body already. Blood began to flow out from his body and into the air. Jian Chen's face grew solemn as he saw the wounds appear. This man's strength was beyond what he'd expected. This man could be said to be the strongest Earth Saint Master he had seen so far. Ah! Suddenly, Jian Chen roared at the sky with a grand voice that could be heard by anyone within a 10-mile distance. His saint force burst out of his body. With an extreme amount of effort from his legs, he flew out of the tornado so fast the ground beneath him fractured. He pointed the gleaming light wind sword in his hand at the man. There was a frightened look on the man's face. He hadn't expected Jian Chen to run out of the tornado, but with some difficulty, he held his sword perpendicular to Jian Chen's sword. Clang! The two saint weapons smashed together and caused another ripple of energy to fly out, causing Jian Chen to retreat back a few steps. A bright azure and violet glow appeared around his light wind sword. With a flourish, a violet and azure-colored sword chi flew from the sword like lightning towards the middle-aged man. The man clenched his sword close to him. In the short moment the sword chi and his sword met, a hole could be seen in the middle of the sword. The man shook as a guttural groan rose from his throat and his face began to whiten. How is this possible? The man cried out as he looked at the hole in his sword with wide eyes full of disbelief. Jian Chen didn't stop to answer him. Brandishing his sword, the azure and violet sword chi flew at the man once more. His opponent looked at the azure and violet sword chi with a startled look. He knew by now that he couldn't block it and could only dodge the attack. Sliding forward, Jian Chen thrust his light wind sword towards the man. This man was not only strong, but he also had 2 battle skills, making him quite difficult to handle. If it weren't for the azure and violet sword chi, Jian Chen would have been incapable of killing him. With his sharp eyes, the man looked at Jian Chen's sword where he saw the faint glow of the azure and violet sword chi, instantly drawing the connection between that and the sword chi that had struck his saint weapon. The man knew that he was no match now. Without delay, the man immediately turned to flee and instantly disappeared from view. Seeing the man leave, Jian Chen let out a breath of air. The man was a wind-attributed Earth Saint Master, so if he wanted to leave, Jian Chen wouldn't be able to capture him. Jian Chen began to feel some regret in his heart. He had originally thought that he would be able to get a nice profit since this man was extremely strong and vigilant. The moment his opponent saw the sword chi, he immediately fled from Jian Chen, who could only look on in dismay. Jian Chen looked at the rest of the corpses with some hesitation before shifting his gaze towards the remaining space belts. In total, there were about 30 tokens. If the man hadn't taken the rest of the tokens, then Jian Chen's profits would likely have been much higher. Afterwards, Jian Chen continued on towards the mountains in search of prey. Bang! Suddenly, a loud sound could be heard from far away as a giant fireball appeared out of nowhere and flew at Jian Chen. Chapter 298, The yellow-clothed girl. Seeing the giant fireball flying through the air at him, Jian Chen could only stare in shock, but quickly, he brought himself back to his senses and leaped out of the way. Bang! An ear-deafening sound could be heard as the fireball exploded where Jian Chen used to be standing. The crater left behind was approximately 3 meters wide and had split the entire ground near it while burning up everything in the impact zone. Seeing just how large the crater was, Jian Chen's eyes widened before muttering with a shocked look, This is what the impact zone of a magical crystal cannon would look like. Several seconds later, another boom could be heard as another fireball from a few kilometers away shot toward him from a nearby mountain peak. Jian Chen locked onto the peak where the fireball was shot from and immediately headed over there. In a flash, Jian Chen had reached the area and began to climb the peak to the top. The peak wasn't all that large and only had a circumference of 10 meters. Mounted on top of one of the 5-meter holes was a single pitch-dark magical crystal cannon with a 30-year-old youth facing downward. His eyes swept across the ground below for a target, but the manner in which he was doing so made him seem like a thief, making for a comical sight. When Jianshan saw the magical crystal cannon, he had to resist the urge to sigh. He didn't think that the fireball shot at him was from a magical crystal cannon. In this gathering of the mercenaries, there had really been someone that brought a magical crystal cannon. At that moment, the youth had realized something was amiss behind him. Turning violently, he grew startled as he saw just how young Jianshan was, but what shocked him even more was just how silent he was, sneaking up behind him as if he wasn't there in the first place. Without hesitating, the youth decided to run down the peak of the mountain in an attempt to run away. Flickering away from sight, Jianshan instantly appeared by the youth's side. Grabbing onto the clothes of the youth, he brought him into the air before throwing him back down to the ground. "Don't kill me, I'll give you my token." The youth had lost all hope in running away and began to beg for his life with a frantic voice. Jianshan stood by the edge of the hole where he threw the youth and spoke at him from above. "What is your name?" I'm called Jacob," the youth replied. Jianshan looked at the giant cannon still perched on the top before looking at Jacob. "You know how to install a magical crystal cannon?" "Why, yes. I've learned how to since I was small. Every single important component of the cannon I'm very familiar with. Even with my eyes closed I'd be able to assemble a magical crystal cannon straight away," Jacob stammered out. A happy smile appeared on Jianshan's face. "Do you wish to live?" "I do." "Great swordsman, please let me go, I'll give up anything on me in exchange," Jacob pleaded with him almost in tears. Jianshan leaped down the hole and brought out a giant steel box from within his space ring, causing the hole to feel slightly cramped. Jianshan pointed at the box. "If you are able to show me how to assemble the essential parts, then I will let you go. Furthermore, I'll even give you a reward for it." At this, the youth had a joyful look that held a small hint of disbelief as he looked at the fantastical steel box. This is the pedestal of the cannon," Jacob muttered as he looked at the part. After hearing Jacob's words of this item, Jianshan let out a sigh in relief. The advanced tier magical crystal cannon part had only been in his possession for a short amount of time. Unfortunately, he had been unable to figure out how to assemble it, and it could only serve as garbage as it was now. This was finally a chance for him to assemble the cannon. Jianshan could feel excitement at this, since this was a powerful weapon of destruction capable of killing an Earth Saint Master. Although he was already an Earth Saint Master that could fight other ones without any significant trouble, this advanced tier magical crystal cannon would still serve some use. "Open it up and see if it can be assembled. I hope that you won't disappoint me," Jianshan spoke up from the side. "As long as it is a magical crystal cannon, then it will be no problem for me. Whatever defect or problem it has, I can fix." Jacob spoke with great confidence in himself as he turned to open the steel box and reveal the items within it. After opening one of the boxes, he could see that the materials used to construct this cannon were quite different. With an astonished cry, he spoke with shock. "This is an advanced tier magical crystal cannon. Good heavens, this type of cannon can fire up to 20 kilometers away and kill an Earth Saint Master. Am I going blind? This type of magical crystal cannon is something multiple countries would fight over and would spend a lot of money to buy one for themselves. Hurry up and assemble it for me. The sooner you do so, the sooner you can leave." Jianshan spoke impatiently. Yes. I'll get on it right away." It was only now that Jacob remembered that his life was still in danger. Straight away, Jacob began to move both of his hands as he quickly assembled the pieces. In an hour, he had assembled and disassembled the cannon 3 times for Jianshan to take notes and study. Although a regular cannon had nearly 1,000 pieces to it, with Jianshan's intellect and cognitive ability, he was able to remember everything. An advanced tier magical crystal cannon was even larger than the cannon from before. If fastened to the same place, then it would take a whole 10 meters. Taking out a Class 5 monster core from his space belt, he spoke out happily, "Let me test out the strength of this cannon." Jacob spoke with a painful look. An advanced tier magical crystal cannon has no room for doubt. Using a single class 5 monster core would be a waste. You should try to save those. Afterward, the energy continued to flow from the monster core into the cannon. Slowly, the cannon began to prepare to fire as an explosive amount of energy began to flow out of the cannon, giving everyone a dangerous vibe. Jacob and Jianchen stood to the side and watched the cannon suddenly shoot out a single burst of energy without any harm to them. Bang! Once it was done charging, the sounds of cannon fire could be heard as the cannon began to fire. Both people could only see a shining ball of light shoot out of the cannon before flying into the sky before finally landing on top of a nearby mountain peak. Bang! From far away, Jianchen could feel a disturbance in the air. Smoke filled the air as the peak that had been fired at began to crumble away with large rocks and a crumbling sound. As for the sky above, there was a giant mushroom right above that shocked anyone that saw it. Half a moment later, Jianchen slowly set out toward the peak only to discover that the top part of the peak had been obliterated without a single piece left behind. This is the power of an advanced tier magical crystal cannon? How astonishing! It is no wonder that this is a weapon that can kill even Earth Saint Masters. Jacob spoke to Jianchen with a look of astonishment. Even Jianchen had been intimidated by the power of the cannons. With this, not only could he kill an Earth Saint Master, but even Class 5 magical beasts. If the power of a cannon was truly as strong as they say, then even an Earth Saint Master would not be as terrifying to deal with if this cannon was used. Jianchen took out a few Class 4 monster cores and handed them to Jacob. "You may go, these are for you." Jacob took the items gratefully before leaving quickly. Seeing how hurriedly he was traveling, it seemed as if he was worried Jianchen might renege on his promise. Jianchen sighed before looking at the cannon with him before finally looking at the useless parts of the cannon. After Jianchen had disassembled the cannon and stored it in his space ring, he could suddenly detect some movement with his ears. With the light wind sword appearing in his hands, he instantly stabbed behind him. Bang! A loud explosive sound could be heard the instant Jianchen had acted. Clenching onto his sword, Jianchen was sent flying back before coughing up some blood. His entire body felt mushy now. Although he had originally been on a mountain, he had no idea where he was at now. Jianchen's light wind sword fell down behind him as he let out another hack of blood. His eyes stared wide away only to discover that 3 kilometers away on another peak, there was a yellow-robed person. Since the distance was too far, he couldn't see his appearance clearly. Jianchen could only feel shock in his heart now. The opponent was far too strong. In a single blow, he had suffered a great deal of damage, and that was when attacked from 3 kilometers away. Jianchen immediately leaped down from the peak and began to look for shelter on the ground below. A large voice could be heard coming toward Jianchen. Using the terrain to hide himself and his tracks, he could hear just where the other person was at. Then, leaping out from his spot, he began to charge at his target. However, the man had been anticipating Jianchen's surprise attack. A single sword around 4 meters long had instantly appeared in his hands with a light blue color. The sword rippled with light that resembled that of a water ripple before surging with saint force. The yellow-robed person held his sword perpendicular to Jianchen's. In an instant, the two charged to exchange several blows before retreating. Despite growing paler with each exchange, he could feel himself standing tall without yielding. His right hand held his weapon, which he pointed toward the yellow-robed figure. Just as Jianchen saw the person's appearance, a cold glare returned the strange look on Jianchen's face. The yellow-robed person was actually a 20-year-old lady with an appearance that could rival the immortals. Her long black hair danced in the wind behind her, but did nothing to hide the amazingly cold glare within her eyes that brimmed with intelligence. Even her eyebrows had a feeling of elegance to them. On the back of the woman was a 2-meter longbow made of gold that was giving off a golden shine, making it seem quite unordinary. Seeing this lady, Jianchen's eyes narrowed as he revealed a thoughtful look. He didn't know why, but he had felt a feeling of familiarity when he saw her. It was almost as if he had seen her before from somewhere, but he didn't know where. The other woman stared coldly at Jian Chen. Then, in a split second, her pupils suddenly dilated as her face underwent a change. With shock, she looked at Jian Chen's face closely before giving off an enraged aura. "So it's you. You're that smelly rogue." Chapter 299, Ruler Armament. The other woman stared coldly at Jian Chen. Then, in a split second, her pupils suddenly dilated as her face underwent a change. With shock, she looked at Jian Chen's face closely before giving off an enraged aura. "So it's you. You're that smelly rogue." This yellow-clothed girl was the very same girl Jian Chen had accidentally stumbled upon when Jian Chen was bathing in the same river outside Wake City. Seeing how Jian Chen had recognized her, the girl immediately felt the memories coming back to her. Feeling intense shame, the woman felt an indescribable amount of hatred burst in her heart. With an angry shout, she charged at Jian Chen. Up until that year, the girl had never been peeped on when bathing by a man before. So that had been a bitter event where every moment of her life, she had always thought about finding the man who dared look at her body and punish him. However, after departing from Wake City, she had never found Jian Chen's footsteps, which caused her feelings of hatred to slowly leak away. Today, however, when she found him again, her heart had instantly burst with anger beyond reason. Jian Chen looked at her with a serious face. The girl's first strike had caused him to feel awe, but he had not been discouraged. Instead, his fighting spirit had been roused to the maximum. As the two exchanged blows, the girl suddenly realized something new. Right now, Jian Chen's strength was vastly different than what it was like before. "An Earth Saint Master, you've made a breakthrough to that realm? Just how? In the past, your strength was far inferior to mine and you still couldn't be a match for me. It has only been a few years, just how did you make such a large leap in strength for you to be able to be my opponent?" The girl cried out in shock. She looked at the handsome face of Jian Chen, unable to take the news realistically. Despite the shock, she continued to fight Jian Chen with her blue-colored sword that continued to fire off water saint force as she fought. "Miss, that accident back then was a misunderstanding. Even if we continue fighting, the outcome is not clear. Why don't we stop fighting?" Despite it happening a long time ago, Jian Chen still felt that he was in the wrong. The person was a woman after all, and he had accidentally saw her most private spots. This to him, made him very apologetic. "You bastard, don't you even think about it. This miss will definitely teach you a lesson." Hearing Jian Chen mention that forbidden event, the girl howled in anger. Leaping back, she withdrew the golden longbow on her back and immediately aimed the bow at him. Straight after the longbow had been pulled back, a single arrow made of pure energy began to form. The entire shaft began to emit a large rippling force of energy as soon as it fully condensed. Jian Chen became startled at the sight. His mind instantly made the connection that it was this longbow that had been responsible for the first strike. Without a single bit of hesitation, he immediately leaped behind the peak he had been on. At that moment, the lady had already released the string and sent the energy arrow flying. The arrow immediately flew at high speed toward the peak Jian Chen was hiding behind. Bang! Following an ear-deafening sound, the 300-meter-tall peak immediately toppled down in a cascade of rocks. Jian Chen's ash-covered body flew out of the rubble with amazement. The longbow in the girl's possession was far too strong. He didn't know what type of weapon it was, but it was able to release the same amount of power from an Earth Saint Master as an advanced tier magical crystal cannon could. Just as Jian Chen landed on the ground, the girl came at him with an arrow already flying straight at him once more. Startled, Jian Chen immediately threw himself to the side as another golden arrow flew through where Jian Chen was once standing at. Bang! Another mountain peak crumbled from the strike due to the overpowering might of the golden longbow. Every arrow was capable of destroying a mountain peak and could even bring an Earth Saint Master to a standstill. The longbow might have been able to strike against a Heaven Saint Master. Jian Chen's figure continued to flicker away from sight as he dodged the girl's arrows. Although the arrows were traveling at an extremely fast speed, Jian Chen himself wasn't all that slow. He was always able to dodge at the last moment so that the closest arrow hadn't even nicked him, thus escaping danger. After a while, Jian Chen began to lose strength. He didn't dare take on another arrow now since each arrow was capable of causing a tremendous amount of damage. Bastard, if you're a man, don't even think about running away. Releasing another barrage of 20 arrows, the girl cried out in anger. I don't wish to stand around to be your live shooting target, I'm just not that foolish. Jian Chen spoke. You, the woman immediately felt her cheeks redden in anger. Even with the anger she felt toward Jian Chen, she couldn't help but feel conflicted. In the past, she had desperately wished to turn the one who looked at her naked body into mincemeat, but now, she realized that the scoundrel that had seen and touched her had inexplicably grew to the same level as her. Despite that huge jump, however, she still couldn't accept him as someone respectable. Ha 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 ha, Wan Air, it's a good thing that you made such a ruckus here, or else I never would have been able to find you. You've made me suffer quite a bit. Suddenly, 5 men came out of nowhere and landed nearby. Upon hearing them, the girl's face suddenly grew dark. Immediately halting her attack on Jian Chen, she leaped back and began to shoot her longbow at the 5 newcomers with no hesitation. Whoosh! The golden arrows flew through the air with a whistling sound as they traveled toward the men. The men dropped down from the peak they were standing on as the golden arrow flew toward them. Just as an arrow was about to make contact, a transparent barrier appeared and covered them all. The powerful golden arrow made contact with the barrier, trembling for a moment, but it successfully blocked the arrow, protecting the men inside. Wan Air, don't waste your energy. Your ruler armament can't hurt me. One of the youths from the group laughed. His age wasn't all that old and looked to be around Ming Dong's age, near 27 or 28. Ruler's armament? Could that longbow be a ruler's armament? Jian Chen was filled with confusion. A ruler armament was something he was unfamiliar with since this was the first time he had heard of it. Miss Wan Air, you should hand over your ruler armament. There is no one around to protect you and I see no way for you to escape our grasp. The youth laughed with a casual smile. The girl's face seemed to have frozen over as she looked at the 5 with a furious look. Wanting my ruler armament is wishful thinking. Wait until we make it out, Uncle Feng and Uncle Yun will definitely avenge this. Huh, Wan Air, don't even think about the 2 old men. They will be dealt with as well. The 5 men were quickly approaching with the youth still laughing. Hearing this, the yellow-robed girl glared as she shot another 3 arrows. So your Shi family has been conspiring for our Huang family's ruler armament. The ruler armament is something our Shi family wants. Hand it over obediently and don't waste your energy. With that, there was less than a kilometer dividing the 2. During their approach, the girl continued to fire off shots one after another at the men. Their barrier continued to shake and tremble under the barrage, but the energy shock waves from the blasts continued to hit the surrounding ground and shock the eardrums of everyone there. Jian Chen looked on at the longbow in mute silence. The girl was shooting arrows at an incredibly strong rate with an equally strong amount of force, but they were unfortunately too weak to break the barrier. There was not a single amount of damage on any of the 5, but now they couldn't move forward either with the increasing amount of arrows coming at them. Wan Air, don't bother yourself. Using the ruler armament uses a large amount of Saint Force. You can't keep this up for long. The moment your Saint Force is gone, then your fate is in our hands. The youth holding up the barrier laughed evilly as he stared at the girl with obscene eyes. The lady continued to shoot arrow after arrow at them. With each shot, the sounds reverberated throughout the mountain range. The shots were extremely loud and had attracted many men. Every man proceeded to cautiously hide in faraway places, watching from afar within the barrier. The 4 men behind the barrier inched toward the sides. In an instant, they charged from the barrier toward the girl from every direction. Immediately reassigning her target, the girl shot a single arrow that flew at one of the men with a golden light. Following an explosive bang, the man flew away with blood coming out from his mouth. Following the violent twang of the bowstring, another arrow was shot forth and pierced through the chest of another. A hole the size of a small fist could be seen after the arrow flew through and had completely obliterated the organs within his body. Even as the girl killed 2 of the 4 in a short amount of time, the other 2 men had already traveled to the side where the girl was. In an instant, their saint weapons appeared in their hands as they slashed down at her. The longbow was useless in close range, so the girl put away her longbow on her back and pulled out her blue sword once more to fight with the 2 men. Midair, who's going to save you now? At that moment, the youth that had been maintaining the barrier immediately charged forth with a bright red spear ready to strike. While the youth wasn't that old, he along with the other 2 men were all Earth Saint Masters. With the fight being 1 versus 3, she had quickly lost any advantages she had. Adding on to the other side's battle experience, she couldn't do anything but be slowly forced back. Chapter 300, Seal of Treasure Mountain. Midair, you can't hold on for much longer now. Hand over the ruler armament obediently and don't resist. The youth laughed again with a carefree smile as if the ruler armament was already his. Sure, Xiangran, you are dreaming if you think you'll be able to get my ruler armament. The girl shouted angrily as she turned toward Jiangchen. Scoundrel. If you help me deal with them, then I'll write off our differences. Hearing the girl request for help, the youth's face grew dark as he looked at Jiangchen dangerously. This is a personal grudge between the Shi family and the Huang family. If you try to intervene, then be prepared to face the consequences. This is the grudge between our 2 families. If an outsider dares to intervene, then they won't be able to live another 3 months. The other male fighting the girl cried out in anger as he moved about in his black clothes. Anyone not related to this matter should leave immediately or else face the wrath of our Shi family. Any one of our hated enemies will be eternally hunted down. The second man with a scar on his face roared as he tried to intimidate Jiangchen. Although they had the superiority in numbers, they desperately wanted the ruler armament. At such a crucial moment, they didn't want another mishap to happen. In the case that they could take hold of the ruler armament, then they would have nothing to fear. Within the gathering of the mercenaries, no man would be able to threaten them if they were to use the ruler armament. Jiangchen stood right where he was in complete disregard of the men's threats. Looking at the girl being pushed back, Jiangchen began to hesitate for a moment on whether or not he should help her avoid this calamity. Although the past event had caused Jiangchen to feel some guilt, he hadn't forgotten about the heavy price he had paid in the past. The 2 elders had caused a tremendous amount of damage to him, so severe that he had almost no chance of survival. Adding on to that, the girl had also tried to attack him from afar with arrows of unbelievable strength. Then she had shot more than 20 arrows at him, causing him to feel a good amount of anger. A miserable cry could be heard as the girl wasn't able to dodge in time and took a slash to her arm. Right now the 3 men were advancing in on her from 3 different directions, making it nearly impossible for her to escape. At this sight, Jiangchen knew that the girl wouldn't be able to last any longer. Throwing away his hesitation and biting his lips, he made his decision. With his light wind sword, he flew into the encirclement and blocked the sword of the black-robed man. So you dare to get in the way of our Shi family, you must be tired of living. The man roared. Kid, it's too late to run now. The long spear-wielding youth thundered at Jiangchen while lashing out at the girl with a malicious face and an angry roar. Refusing to listen, Jiangchen began to launch a fierce amount of sword chi from his sword to the black-robed man. Using his axe, the black-robed man waved it in order to block the incoming attack. In the end, his axe wasn't fast enough for Jiangchen. In 2 moves, he was completely overwhelmed by Jiangchen. Just as he tried to swing his axe, Jiangchen's sword thrust forward with such a speed that the man wasn't able to recall his axe in time. The sword immediately pierced through his throat with the tip of the sword, causing droplets of blood to come dripping out. The black-robed man looked at Jiangchen with a rigid look of disbelief. He couldn't believe that Jiangchen had been so fast for him to be unable to even react to his strike. Third eldest. Seeing the black-robed man die, the other man fighting the girl immediately flew into a teeth-gnashing rage with eyes that overflowed with killing intent for Jiangchen. Even the nearly 30-year-old youth had been caught off guard by this. He didn't think that such a young youth like Jian Chen would be able to kill an Earth Saint Master so quickly. Such a strong fighting strength like this had even caused him to feel some fear. "My friend, there is no need for you to incur the anger of our Shi family. Could it be that you've forgotten about how this girl has treated you? If you join hands with us, then if we can deal with this girl, our Shi family will reward you heavily." The youth spoke out to Jian Chen. "Spare him your lies, the men from the Shi family have always been despicably shameless. Your words are nothing but empty. Once you've killed a member of the Shi family, then they will never let you go." The girl was afraid that Jian Chen would help them and began to talk quickly. Jian Chen continued to have that cold impassive look on his face as he pulled the sword out from the black-robed man's throat. He had ignored the words from both sides since he had long since made his conclusion. Immediately running toward the other man fighting the girl, his sword flashed like lightning in an attempt to strike at him. "You're seeking death." At this, the youth cried out in anger as his face clouded over. He hadn't thought that the youth would refuse his sweet-sounding invitation. This was a heavy shock to him and caused him to feel extremely angry as well before feeling a strong amount of killing intent overtake him. Jian Chen's light wind sword flew at the man with multiple mirror images that covered the sky with the sheer amount of them. It was hard to tell the difference between real and fake, and even if the man could tell, it would disappear in the next second as the sword came ever so close to him. The man grew serious at this sight. Immediately closing his eyes, he allowed his spirit to feel out the sword's true trajectory as the giant sword in his own hand began to pulsate with saint force. Jian Chen's light wind sword continued to strike forward one movement at a time. Each thrust was inconceivably fast and seemed as if it was just one huge blur. Anyone on the outside would only see Jian Chen was striking once, but in reality he had already struck out several times in a single movement that made it seem like one. With such a fast speed like this, the man would be unable to block all of them and could only defend himself a few times before the sword strikes increase anymore. "This opponent is too strong, Lord Shi, please activate the barrier." The man cried as he retreated away from Jian Chen. His voice had already began to tremble in fear as he felt his neck start to bleed from being nicked several times. Hearing the frightened yelp of the man, the youth looked on in alarm. Hastily, he looked at Jian Chen and the man's fight only to see that the man was slowly being forced back away from Jian Chen while defending himself blindly. At the same time, the girl he had been fighting turned to look at Jian Chen with her bright eyes. With a look of disbelief, she too felt shocked from such the scene. How can this be? His strength has suddenly become something completely amazing. He wasn't like this before, and even then he was already injured by several of my arrows before. The girl was in shock. Then, a light went off in her head as she thought, could it be that he was holding back his strength when he was fighting me? "Kid, you've ruined a major affair with our Shi family. We will definitely not forgive you for this. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, our Shi family experts will dismember your body limb by limb." The youth roared with anger. Each word had been angrily gnashed out for emphasis. Even as he spoke, a transparent barrier suddenly came into view and protected his entire body. The youth retreated from his battle with the girl and came to protect the middle-aged man from Jian Chen's attack. His long spear was like a viper that blurred as it flew at Jian Chen's heart. Jian Chen's light wind sword suddenly began to spike with an incredibly sharp amount of sword qi. As it met the long spear, the sword slid across the spear's shaft to stab fiercely into the barrier. The barrier shook for a moment before regaining a tranquil state almost instantly. While the barrier looked weak, the defenses were actually absurdly strong, so even Jian Chen's sword was unable to shatter it. The youth behind the barrier looked at the sword with some fear before glaring at Jian Chen with a sneer. "Kid, you're not long for life now." With that, he hefted his spear upward before smashing down at him with a whistling sound. Without a single word, Jian Chen dodged the spear before turning toward the middle-aged man. With a silver light, his light wind sword flew at his throat. The middle-aged man was still feeling some fear from Jian Chen's sword, so he could only try to defend himself from Jian Chen. When he saw Jian Chen's sword come at him, he lifted his sword up in a protective manner while throwing himself back to allow the barrier to protect him. Although being beaten by a 20-year-old youth was extremely embarrassing for him, compared to his life, what use was face or money? Just as the light wind sword made contact with the man's sword, the very tip immediately broke through the sword and stabbed into the man's heart. A large amount of the sword chi within the sword burst outward and completely destroyed his heart and the other inner organs. The man's body immediately locked up rigidly as blood poured out from his wounds. Even in death, his eyes stared at Jian Chen in utter shock before slowly falling to the ground, dead to the world. "Why you?" The youth hidden behind the barrier went ashen in the face while trying to say something. Both of his eyes spat out metaphorical fires as he stared at Jian Chen with pure hatred that was unmatched by any other feelings he had ever felt before. Before, he was in great shape without any major problems. He had thought that his plan was already perfected and the ruler armament was already in his hands. However, at this crucial moment, Jian Chen had appeared and turned back the situation. His completed mission had instantly gone up in smoke and he had even lost 2 of the Earth Saint Master experts with him. "Shi Xiangran, I don't see any way for you to take my ruler armament now." The girl spoke with relief in her heart as she stared vehemently at the youth. A few days ago, the fellow bodyguards from the Huang family had valiantly given up their lives in order to protect her from the Shi family men. Just thinking about those deaths had caused the girl to feel an extreme amount of grief and anguish. Slowly retrieving the longbow on her back, she drew the longbow and pointed it at Shi Xiangran despite knowing her strength wasn't strong enough to break the barrier. Shi Xiangran's face grew extremely dark. Good. I wasn't planning on using my secret treasure, but you've really forced my hand." With that, Shi Xiangran suddenly took out an iron chunk within the space ring on his finger. The chunk was dark green in color and had a simple decorative design on it. The moment the girl saw the chunk in his hands, her face instantly grew shocked. "That's the seal of Treasure Mountain. I didn't think that the Shi family would have allowed you to carry such a priceless defensive treasure." You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.